I drive because I love my children on the bus. I started off driving to be at home with my children on snow days and holidays. And in that 24-year time that I've been with the county, I have enjoyed every child on my bus and the families and the connections I've met.
Why do I drive? I drive because of the students. It's those students that make my day. You make relationship with these students, and even after they graduate from high school, they'll come up and give you a hug and let you know that they appreciate you and what you did.
I love driving a school bus because I had a school bus driver that I admired, and I always watched her, and she was a great person, and that challenged me to be a good bus driver. And I was a trainer for 2 years for Roanoke County, and I loved it. I enjoyed showing people what I do.
This is a family. We consider ourselves part of the transportation family. And once you become part of the family, you stay part of the family. We learn about each other's family, we support each other, we're there for each other, and we have fun while we're doing it. We get to help the students, we get to be there for them and support them.
I drive the school bus because I wanted to have some adult interaction as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to get out, and driving with Roanoke County, I have great students. I've enjoyed this for nearly 20 years now, and I also like being a part of the community, and they trust me with their kids, and I enjoy being with my students.
I enjoy driving. The best part about driving the school bus is the children that I pick up every day.
Why?
Because they keep me younger. I'm 78 years old. They keep me younger.
I retired from public service, and I stayed at home and did all my honeydews, and basically I got bored. And I wanted something to do. My wife was a teacher, so this allowed me to have money and time off during the summer.
We do this to have something to do. A lot of our drivers are retirees, and they come out to do their community service and have a routine and have a reason to get up in the morning, and they get a little extra fun money to go on vacation and that kind of stuff. So it's a great job.
My best friend's been driving for over 10 years. And he said, look, if you're gonna work part-time, you might as well make as much money as you can. And for a part-time job, it pays pretty good for this area. I enjoy the elementary kids more than I do anything. But it's been a lot of fun.
People tell me that, how can you drive kids? And I'm like, hey, that's the best part of the job. The rest of it's a piece of cake. So, but I really enjoy, driving and keeps me active, gets me up in the morning.
I drive the school bus because I love it. It's an awesome job. I love going and picking up the students, watching them get on the bus, the little ones with the big smiles on their face, wondering, all the excitement they're going to be doing while they're going to school, middle, high school. I drive all ages. It's just a wonderful job.
I drive because I'm retired Navy, and it's great, after serving my country, to give back to my community. Our kids are the future of America, and it's great to have a part to where I'm contributing to them and to make sure that they get what they need.
We will train you from the get-go. We should be able to help you through the whole process of getting your learner's permit, getting your endorsements, and then we have a 24-hour classroom training that we do, and then we do your 24-hour on-the-road training. So we do all of it in-house. All you need to do is come with a love for children.
They might have been able to save his life. Because they did 12 hours of surgery on this guy to remove a tumor around his spine. And I don't think they would have done that if they thought he was terminal. Right. But he just didn't survive the surgery. Yeah. He's a nice guy. Yes, he was. I had some good times with him. Yeah. 59. Yeah. He was what you call a curmudgeon. Right? You're laughing, right? But likable, right? He was a curmudgeon. Yeah, he was a curmudgeon.
I'd say something he was like. Sometimes if you have music, you just look at me and really?
He told me at Glenbury he was the only rooster in the whole house. It was all women. That's right. He's the only rooster.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 Roanoke County School Board work session. We have been in closed session. Mr. Moretz, would you please read us out of closed?
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss ongoing personnel matters under investigation pursuant to the personnel exemption at 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia. Also move to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second, thank you. Madam Clerk, the roll?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Item number 2.03, action from closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move that the Roanoke County School Board agree to vote on a proposed amendment to the superintendent's contract and waive the requirements of Virginia Code Section 22.1-60D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I also move that the amendment to the superintendent's contract that was proposed in closed session be adopted.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Greenway?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moran?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Linden?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. All right, before we get to item number 3, Roanoke County lost a couple of really good employees over the last couple of weeks in the athletic director, Richard McElwee, out at Glenver, and assistant basketball coach there at Cave Spring, Tim Myers. So I'd like to have a quick moment of silence as we remember those two outstanding employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and before we get any further, I believe Mr. Butzer has some comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to Mike Ray today, and he authorized me to share some information about his recent bout with COVID. Mr. Ray was diagnosed with COVID just about a couple of weeks ago, and he spent about 8 days in the hospital. This disease, this virus, really hit Mr. Ray hard, and it comes a little close to home for me because Mike and I are about the same age, and we're in relatively good shape for our age. And so it was surprising for me and also disconcerting that he had such a terrible time with the virus. But he asked me to kind of just share, what his experience was. His oxygen levels dropped to a dangerously low level. He was admitted to the hospital. His wife or his son called 911. They took him to the hospital where he was admitted. And he was given lots of courses of different kinds of drugs, but the most concerning thing was that they couldn't get his oxygen levels up. But the thing that I wanted to share with you is that I've known Mike for about 5 years, and we've gotten to be pretty friendly given the fact that we're around the same age. But Mike's not one to share a whole lot of personal things with folks. But I do want to share with you what he shared with me today that was kind of emotional for me. He talked about the loneliness of being on the COVID ward. He talked about the isolation, no visitors. He shared with me that there were people dying on the ward. He knew that. He could see that. And he actually shared with me, and he broke down a little bit, and it got me a little emotional that he actually didn't know whether he was going to live or die. And so he's had a rough time with it. He just wanted me to let folks know that while it's true that the virus doesn't impact people as gravely as it did with him, that it's sort of Russian roulette. You just never know. And it has hit him hard. He has difficulty even getting through a sentence without showing that he's distressed. So he just wanted me to let you all know that it's real. And that has certainly made a believer out of him. And Mike, if you're listening, we wish you well. We can't wait to have you back with us. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Butzer. Yeah, and Mike, I know you probably are listening. I know you wanted to be here today, so we do hope that you're recovering quickly and 100% soon. So hurry back. These guys, I think that's 5 times I've been called Mr. Chairman. It really is Mr. Vice Chairman, I think. But anyway, item number 3.01, the COVID-19 update. Dr. Rhonda Stegall.
Mr. Vice Chairman, while Dr. Stegall speaks, we invited Dr. Cynthia Morrow, who's the head of our Roanoke Allegheny Health Department. You're familiar with probably Dr. Odell's name, who's came out of retirement to head up the K-12 liaison piece. Dr. Morrow is head of the health department and also participates on a weekly phone call with us. So I invited her to listen in to what Dr. Stegall is presenting and then let her make any comments but mainly give you all the opportunity to ask questions of her, ask anything that you're wondering about, because I know you rely on us to relay information, but everybody's got questions, right? So any questions you guys have, I want to give you the chance to ask her directly as well. So we'll get her on the line and let her listen to what Dr. Stegall is presenting, and she can correct or clarify or do whatever she needs to do, and then give you guys a chance to ask any questions. Give me 1 second here.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Morrow, this is Ken Nicely. I've got you on speakerphone, and I'm going to let Dr. Stegall give her presentation based on our updates with you guys, and then if you have any follow-up comments for the board, and then I want them to have a chance to ask you questions directly, we'll do that. I know you've got a 4 o'clock deadline, another phone call, so we'll get right to it.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. So Chuck, if you'll pull up the metrics, we're going to go over the metrics and take a look at the numbers. Just since we've been doing that every meeting, I wanted you to just see how it has been changing over time. Here's our school metrics. So let's see, that is this week right there. So it's showing, you can see the numbers. And are you scrolling back in date? Back in date. So our numbers have not been as high this week as Monday was heavy to be anticipated, because we had several days of those cases gathering over the holidays. Today we only had one, so we'll see. We're anticipating an increase due to Thanksgiving. It usually takes 4 to 5 days for us to start to see that happening. So we're thinking by the end of this week we should see the full impact of Thanksgiving. So we'll have to see how this week falls out. So if you'll go on down to the health department metrics. And so this one here is the one that we pull up, and this is the CDC guidance, and we look for Roanoke County. And then we're going to pull up what we look like here. You remember in the past weeks we've been red, and the 2 indicators. And today we're red and yellow. So the red is still the primary number that we're looking at there, and the second number is just another number that we look at, but that's not always as reliable, because the first number is the one that we really want to pay the most attention to. So just to show that it has changed a little bit, but some of our localities are still red, so surrounding localities. For example, Roanoke City still red. There's a lot of those that are. So Chuck, if you'll go to the number of outbreaks, and take a look at the map too as well. You can see how the map color has changed over the last couple weeks since we've been doing this presentation. We started with just a little bit of red. Now you can see it's the majority red. So it's another indicator that obviously our state is growing. And then Chuck, if you look at the one, you can go ahead and look at that one. This is the list of the health department's list of schools that have had outbreaks. So they put those on the website, and they list the school division and the school and the number of outbreaks. And so there's the list that is up to date. And you can see, thankfully, we're not there. But I think considering the number of schools, because this is done by division and by school, that this is fairly a low number for outbreaks across all the schools in the state of Virginia. So I think that speaks to the fact that what we're seeing here in Roanoke County is, yes, we have cases in our school division, but we're not exposing and transmitting the virus within the school, causing outbreaks that are causing either shut down classrooms or shut down schools. So I think that supports our numbers as well. And then Chuck, if you'll go to the weekly activity level for the VDH metrics. And it'll say weekly activity level. This is the one that really I like to look at because it makes more sense to me. Remember when I first showed you this, there were only 3 of the regions that were in high burden. Now, of course, there's 5. So the only one not in high burden is the eastern. So if you'll scroll down to the bottom, are you in near south? Okay, scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we're fluctuating. All the other regions are increasing. We're fluctuating, which means we're just going up and down. And scroll down a little bit lower. See where that 19 is? For some reason, that chart's not coming up. But anyway, there's a half moon chart there that shows the different levels. And 16 is where we would hit moderate, and we're at 19. So we're moving away from moderate. We're not moving closer. Remember there at one time we were right into substantial, and we were just barely on the line of substantial and moderate. Now we've moved well into substantial because 16 is the number where we would hit moderate. So we're clearly going in the wrong direction. So I think that's a good indicator that shows us that. And then, so some of the other data we've looked at is the outbreaks in our schools or our exposures. So we did do a count of our exposures, and we've had, of our students, we've had 43 exposures and staff 28, and that's been since the opening of school. When you take a look at the exposures, what an exposure is when someone is positive with COVID, comes into the school and transmits that or has the potential of a close contact with someone else. And we consider that exposure. So if they're within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes for a 24-hour period, they're considered an exposure. So we put them on quarantine to keep for safety purposes. So that's what's considered exposures. So a lot of these exposures, when you look at them, the staff ones, they're not necessarily student to staff or staff to student. They're mostly staff to staff. We've had a large number of exposures where teachers are working together too closely or, eating lunch together and have exposed each other. It's more of that happening with our staff than it is student to teacher and teacher to student. So that's a good thing. We just got to control that a little bit more of the teachers exposing each other. And then the students, what we're seeing on the student exposures is that it's student to student exposure. So they're, hanging out with someone at school or on the bus. We've seen probably more on the bus than anything else because the younger kids are not staying 6 feet apart and they're leaning over the seats talking to each other. It's difficult for a bus driver to maintain that and drive at the same time. So I know they're doing the best they can. So that's where we're seeing a lot of our student exposures are simply from those scenarios where kids are just socializing, getting too close for more than 15 minutes. And so cases by area, if you take a look at this chart, this is something that we were asked to take a look at just to see what the trend is by our areas of school. So it's broken down. You can see the Cave Spring areas first. So the first column shows the total number of student staff that are feeder schools into that area. So that's the total number of possible students and staff. And then there's the positive number of cases in the second column as of November 30th. And then there's the percent of positive cases relative to the population. So it shows that Cave Spring area 1.8, Glenver area 1.2, Hidden Valley area 0.7, Northside area 2.1, and William Byrd area 1.4. So it's putting it in perspective of how many teachers, how many students, what's the population, how many are testing positive.
I tell you what, Dr. Segal, I'm just mindful of Dr. Moro's time.
Sure.
Dr. Segal was going to share a little bit of information, Dr. Moro, with what you shared with us this morning about the vaccination process. So I know our board might be interested in that. And then she's also going to give a summary. We've discussed before about the athletic plan, and I know some board members probably had some questions about that as well. So yeah, why don't we give Dr. Moro the chance to elaborate on anything, give you all the opportunity to ask questions of her, because I know she only has about 15 minutes. So.
All right. Thank you.
Well, I think first, thanks for all of that information. It sounds like you are all getting the information you need to be fully informed. At the end of the day, the big question before us is what is the risk benefit of any particular activity, whether it's staying in school, hybrid model, whether it's sports. There's going to be a different risk benefit analysis to each of those. I can't stress enough that even though right now it looks like our numbers are a little bit better than they were last week, we do not expect that to be the case a week from now. Of course, we could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball, but all indicators are that the next 2 weeks are going to be pretty tough for everyone. And with that in mind, I think that the most important thing to do is to look at the data. The data are telling us right now that certainly in our district, in our health districts, we are not having substantial in-school transmission. We may have 1 or 2 cases that are connected, but we are not seeing substantial transmission within schools. And I think that is in large part because you have the opportunity and the ability to enforce mitigation strategies, masking, with the caveats that were discussed earlier, 6 feet, social distancing, physical distancing. The concern I have with any sport is that we can't maintain those community mitigation strategies when there's a contact sport that requires people to be within 6 feet of each other's bubbles, and when mask use is questionable. And for those reasons, I continue to maintain that while at this point staying in school at the level that children are currently in school appears to be protective, and that's a good thing, I would not risk anything by introducing a new threat of decreased contact, decreased opportunity through community mitigation by introducing sports. So I hope that's just my sort of quick synopsis of the scenario. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Dr. Moore, let me ask you a question, because I know the school board has gotten several emails, inquiries. I know some teachers have reached out to you asking about, what some districts have done across Virginia, sort of taking a pause, around the holidays and that kind of thing. I don't want to mischaracterize the conversation that we've had with you, over the past several weeks regarding those questions. I'll let you speak for yourself. But, what our response has been to date is we're going to continue to work with you all, the health department, to, look at the data and see what's going on. And our stance has been that we are concerned about the rising number of cases and the possibility of, a big surge, during the holidays, and we understand that. But our conversation, the way I would characterize it, has been that we want to continue with in-person instruction as long as we can until we become the problem, so to speak. As long as we can continue the good trend that we've had about not having what you called substantial transmissions in our schools, that what I've heard you say is we shouldn't relax our mitigation, but we're also okay to continue moving forward by continuing with our in-person instruction versus feeling like when we need to arbitrarily take a pause on learning based on, potential of concern. That's my understanding, but I want to give you the chance to clarify or correct the understanding that we have and that we've tried to convey.
Yes, I think that you've characterized it exactly the way that we've discussed it. And again, trying to put it in kind of a one sentence, at this point in time, school appears to be, if anything, somewhat protective, although that's a bit of a stretch. It certainly does not appear to be a risk. That can change at any time. That could change if the mitigation strategies that you're currently employing are no longer being employed. So, or if for any reason there's a compromise to the integrity of the mitigation strategy. So again, masking, hand hygiene, physical distancing. Could it be that tomorrow we find out that there is a school in which there is substantial transmission? Absolutely. Would the recommendations change at that time? Absolutely. We would need to look at that situation, understand where the breach was. But at this point, I think it is a good idea to continue what you're doing. The other thing that I would add to that mix, which we've talked about, is we also need to consider the capacity and where the staff are. So if it gets to a point where it's no longer safe because too many staff members are either in isolation or quarantine because of community transmission, that's a whole nother story that each school, not even at the district level, at each school that will have to be assessed separately. So there's the transmission within the schools and there's the capacity of the schools. And at this point, transmission, we are not seeing any substantial in-school transmission, and the faculty staff ratios, that's really at that granular level that only you have the ability to assess.
Does anybody else have questions for Dr. Morrow?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Dr. Morrow, this is Don Butzer. I'm the Catawba School Board representative. I do have something that I'm looking for some advice on. Is that we've certainly, and I know I have certainly been paying attention to this virus since last April and the impact that it has had on our school system. But I also, I think, over time have learned some things, and so there are a couple of things that I'd just like to get your experience on or advice on. We do know that our mitigation strategies, as you said, have absolutely worked, and you can see that in any schools where they've done this. There's actually been some national studies and reporting done that schools have actually not been the problem, and that they may have been a protective area. So there's no doubt about the science there and making that happen. But I also think I've learned, and I'm certainly not a doctor, but I've learned that our children seem to the virus doesn't seem to impact most of our children very much. That they either don't show symptoms or they do very well with it. It's not really that much of a health concern for students, but there may be more of a mental health concern, for students. And there's been a lot of discussion and talk about the anxieties that this virus has caused as a result of school closures. Here's some other things we know. We also know that our kids are seeing each other socially. I see it firsthand that they're not pretty much practicing the social distancing and protocols that you'd like them to do. That's just, they think they're going to live forever. We know that they're traveling, they're playing travel sports, and so we know that those things are happening, yet still it seems like the spread in our schools isn't happening. So here's the question. I've had some parents ask me, is that would it be possible to have, let's say, intramural sports within Roanoke County where Cave Spring plays Northside or Glenver, and that we have intramural sports with very strict conditions, 0 spectators, but yet there would be sports like you would have in traveling sports. So there are a lot of parents who say, you know what, for the mental health of our kids and the anxiety that they have and the desire to be connected again and play sports, they're asking us, would we consider doing that? But here's the question I have for you that I think will help drive my thinking on this, is that at the end of the day, if we were to allow that, even with strict conditions, would we be adding to the risk of community spread by allowing that to happen? That's my question.
And I can only give you my best guess because we wouldn't know until it happened. What I can tell you is the challenge with public health is that when it works, something doesn't happen, right? It's the absence of action. It's the vaccination that saved a life that you didn't know was at risk. So I can't prove to you that not holding sports is going to decrease transmission, but I can tell you that the science supports that not holding even intramural sports decreases the risk of community transmission. There are a couple of factors. One, at Thanksgiving, we made a plea across the country for households to stay within households. Yes, children might be socializing outside school and are socializing outside school. But when you start doing intramural sports and having different school districts, that's the equivalent, or schools within the district, that's the equivalent of saying, okay, well, come to my house for Thanksgiving. That's we want to minimize the intermingling of populations, even if it's not the spectators. And the other thing that I think is an important thing to a counterpoint to this it isn't necessarily about the children. We are fortunate that this virus, unlike H1N1, is not disproportionately affecting children, and in fact, children do seem to be somewhat protected from the serious complications of COVID. But we also know that they can transmit the disease. So even if they're not exhibiting it, anything that increases their risk of getting it increases their risk of not having symptoms and spreading the virus to someone who may have complications from it. And I know you all know that, but I just have to say that with respect to the question, can intramural sports increase the probability of community spread? Absolutely. There's no way to express that it wouldn't increase the risk just by nature of the close contact of sports. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Moretz, Mr. Greenway? No, anybody else?
No, that was very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thanks
if you
for
have
taking
any
time.
further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You know, my job is to support you in any way that I can and to provide you with the best information that I can. So thank you for everything that you're doing to protect our community and to protect the children that you serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Dr. Stegall, did you have more on 3.01?
Yes, we'll finish this real quick. So we went over the chart. Any questions about the chart? Did you get a chance to take a look at that?
To go back, of the 71, I think, exposures, how many of those ended up in resulting in positive cases? Or are those just considered presumed positive?
Well, they're considered exposures. If they were if they would have tested positive, that would have been considered an outbreak.
Okay.
So that would have shut down a classroom or a setting, or we would have hit that chart. So even though we're exposing people, doesn't mean they're actually testing positive afterwards.
Good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is the good news. You know, so we're trying to keep from happening the best we can.
And when we're identifying exposures, they always tell us to throw a wide net. So if you think there's the potential that this kid was maybe sitting 4 feet instead of 6 feet for 20 minutes, you send that kid out for quarantine. So we're throwing a wide net to make sure that we're not, causing additional exposures. But thank goodness we're not having outbreaks, which only, remember, 2 people. One person has it, one person gets it from this person and could have not gotten it from anyone else except for in school. That's considered an outbreak.
I do have a question. I'm a little confused on that. When we have an incident on a bus where we know we've had an exposure that resulted in someone getting COVID, isn't that in fact an outbreak?
If the person had COVID and then gave it to someone who tested positive for COVID, that would have been an outbreak.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have these exposures on the bus, and those are the ones that so when we know that a kid exposed, there has to have been a positive COVID test by someone on that bus, right, to have created an exposure.
The initial person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a follow-up testing on that exposed person?
Mm-hmm. The nurse starts tracking,
And
so they're
far,
constantly.
we have not had any.
Mhm.
Perfect.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to clarify, because you use the word test, they're not necessarily tested, but they do have to be quarantined if they're exposed to see if they start exhibiting
All right.
symptoms.
Well, then that does. So we really don't know for sure 100% if we've had outbreaks
No.
because of the availability of testing and protocol.
That's right.
And because the children may not show symptoms
Right.
like an adult does.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So, okay.
And that goes back to because we have a lot of questions that arise, especially from staff members about the contact tracing.
Right.
You know, how are the nurses doing? I just want to say publicly that, you know, based on my conversations with Dr. Stegall, Charlene Vale, who's our head nurse, I mean, I really feel like that our nurses are trying their level best and really being aggressive and being very conservative with their contact tracing. And our conversations with our health department affirm that. They really feel like that our nurses are doing a really good job. So not to say that, something may not happen or whatever, but I just want to say publicly that I think our nurses are doing a stellar job with this.
Yes.
Do you feel like our parents and staff, when our nurses are attempting to do the contact tracing, are they accommodating, or have they gotten much pushback, resistance?
Yes, it's a struggle because it creates frustration for the entire family. So there is at times some pushback from families. So the nurses are taking the brunt of that, and it's a lot of wear and tear on our nurses. No doubt.
And how do we, there may not be a way to handle it, but I noticed, I believe in an update you gave us last week, we had one school that resulted in 5 people being exposed because these teachers were hanging out outside of school together, right? That's kind of like the community. We have no control over that, correct?
Except what we can control is what happens in school, and of course messaging and making sure that, especially if things are happening in school, like too much proximity in a meeting, that those things are addressed. So, it's not just swept under a rug. We are reminding and addressing those individual situations as well. I feel like the principals are doing a good job with that, as well as the nurses.
Are staff still eating like lunches in the same room? I know some companies have said, hey, employees, when you're on work grounds, you're not eating together. Have we had to institute any, have we considered that, or?
All the lunch areas have been closed down, so those spaces have been closed, discouraging it. When this is happening, it's because the teacher's inviting another teacher into their classroom, and they're eating in that space, just the 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Or they've had a luncheon where they're celebrating somebody's birthday and it's in a classroom. But when we track those things down, the principal was not aware. So then the principal addresses it. This is not to happen again. Several of our principals have had faculty meetings after that has happened and said, look, this should not happen again. So I do feel like our principals are addressing it.
And not to beat up on our staff or teachers either. They're working really hard. This is a really hard situation. But it does require constant effort and messaging and reminders and addressing those situations.
Because I know our staff, I've talked to a bunch, how the grade levels will utilize Wednesdays to, to work together as a team. We obviously don't want to discourage that. So.
Yeah, it's a fine line. When we're looking at our quarantine numbers, we're pushing 385 yesterday, which remember we pushed 400. That's the highest we've been. So we were at 360 last time we met. Now we're at 385. So that is a little bit that's high, but with our substitute, we've been able to maintain to this point. So we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks. But we have 68 staff and 317 students that are quarantined.
Can I throw in one thing? And I'm not sure if I've made the board aware of this. One of the things that we've done as a extra support, our central office staff. I know Dr. McClung mentioned she was subbing in a calculus class today for at least a while, so I'm not sure.
Warm body.
Right. So we do have central office staff assigned to each school, and so they're out there at least 5 hours a week. And they're really at the principal's disposition to help in different ways, including, filling in for, a sub situation, at least for a period of time if they need to, or just helping out in different ways that they need to. So I just want to make you aware of that.
And I want to touch on the 372 students. So we really want to, share with parents that a lot of these exposures are happening. These kids are getting quarantined because the exposures are happening outside of school hours. So they don't go on our count for exposures, but they're clearly happening in the community. So the reason that number is 372, 17 and quite higher is because there's been times where there's been 10 kids in this one case that have been quarantined. There's 19 kids in this one case that's been quarantined. So one positive case at times from the community activity is putting 10, 15, 20 kids out at a time. So that's why that number is spiking up. So we definitely want to encourage parents that, the cases are out there. Kids are being exposed to it, and we're quarantining them, meaning they're missing 2 weeks of school when that happens. So we just need to encourage those, out of school activities that you're just running the risk of being quarantined when you do that. So Dr. Nicely sent a letter out to our parents and to our staff, 2 separate letters. And the reason for that is after our last call with Dr. Odell and Dr. Moreau, it was a conversation around we're worried about the holidays. We basically need to tighten up your protocols, reinforce what you have going on. And this is what we did in this letter, to making sure everybody continues to follow the protocol, stay at home when you're sick. The nurses were getting really frustrated because people would come to work and say, I don't feel good, when they're standing in the school building. And the nurse would say, why did you come to work? So it's constant reinforcement because people are still doing those kinds of things, asking them to follow the screening, maintain the physical distancing, and to constantly, of course, wear a mask. Another thing that Dr. Nicely we had a conversation about was encouraging parents to make preparations in case we get to a point where we don't have the substitutes for the buses or for the classrooms, and that we may have to, or if there's an outbreak, we may have to shut down a classroom or a school. So we just want parents to be prepared that there could be a change in schedule in the near future, to be prepared for that, have a backup plan. That was the point of that notice. And then we've also tightened up a little bit here at Central, and of course in the schools we've asked them to pull back on face-to-face meetings and held all meetings virtually, including IEP meetings and parent meetings. So we're trying to just tighten up just a little bit while we go through these difficult times. And then Operation Warp Speed is the name for the plans to distribute the vaccine. And it's the way that they shared with us today is schools are not a high priority on the list, simply because, of course, the impact on students is minimal. So it's going to be your long-term care facilities, it's going to be your hospitals, they're getting the first doses, and we're way down the line for students. So she said today, don't anticipate it anytime soon. However, in the next couple days, they're expecting approval. They're expecting them to ship out to hospitals, but that doesn't mean that we're going to see it coming through the student level anytime soon.
Forget about teachers. Students are fine. I'm concerned about teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the magic bullet, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So what did they say about teachers?
We haven't seen a priority list yet.
So the way this is working is the prioritization is actually happening at the federal level. There's actually a federal task force. I think they're I heard on the news this morning they were meeting today, but I did hear on the news, and we've asked the question of our local health department folks, and they don't have that information at that level yet. But I did hear on the news that K-12 staff might be considered an other essential worker level. So hopefully that does bump up the prioritization, because I think everybody understands if we can get teachers and staff members in our school as frontline folks vaccinated, that'd be a huge step in terms of getting back to a sense of normalcy, I think. So I hope that pans out.
So given that, what do we need to do? Who do we need to just contact all our legislators and,
it seems to be at the federal level right now. Yeah.
The kids, we know that's not a big deal. So we just need the teachers vaccinated, to remove that threat, and then we can get. It just blows my mind that we hear every politician say we need to get our kids back in school, and I haven't heard of, unless somebody else has, I haven't heard the first politician say put the teachers up front. Makes no sense.
I agree. Makes no sense. If with all the angst and all the discussion about getting our kids back in school, if you can inoculate with a 95% accuracy your teachers, why wouldn't you do that?
It makes no sense.
Yeah, it does.
Again, I hate to be cynical, but it makes you wonder. Is this all talk? Well,
I assume we also cannot. It's a personal choice if you want to get the vaccine too.
Well,
correct.
There better be some that want it.
Well, the jury's out on that in some cases.
Do we know?
That's a discussion. That's a legal discussion, right?
Yeah.
There will be some employers who mandate it, and whether or not that's legal, I don't know.
There's places like this has nothing to do with schools, but we like to go to a lot of concerts. Ticketmaster, you're not going to be able to go to a concert unless you've been vaccinated. So it's going to be an interesting time.
I do see. I looked at the CDC guidelines a couple of weeks ago, and on the prioritization and what they were thinking about, and they did say buried down in the verbiage, education. So I think they're at least thinking about it. Right. Seems a no-brainer to me, but who am I?
Okay. Anything else on 3.01?
Done with that one. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody have
Good
any
job.
other questions? 3.02, athletic update.
Okay, two hot topics. So of course, you're aware that winter sports are dated to start Monday, the 7th and the 14th. There are 2 start dates. Clearly, after looking at the metrics, the 2 metrics that I showed you, the map with the state, we're definitely insubstantial. And then the one we showed in Roanoke where we're red and yellow, those 2 indicators do not allow us to play. So all of our teams currently stay in phase 2 out of season practice, which means they can only do skill and conditioning work. And so we're just waiting for those numbers to change before we start the season. The area superintendents did get together and they sent out a joint message last week that we were going to follow the same criteria to determine when we were going to play. It helps create consistency across school divisions, which is nice. It's very transparent because we're using the metrics that I just showed you that have public access. So everyone knows, every parent, everybody can go on and see whether you're going to be able to play that week or not, because you're going to be able to see the numbers just like I'm looking at the numbers. So it is a regional approach, and we're really hopeful that will work, except we're a good ways away, and we've got the numbers are going to definitely have to change. Our teams have dropped back to phase 2. I think I told you last time we were in phase 3. We've dropped back to phase 2 because of the health department's guidance that we need to tighten up in a little bit more. So we're back to phase 2. So once, if the numbers start to come down, once we go into open season, if we open up a season, then the other out-of-season teams will move into phase 3. So we had some great news this week. We've been talking about a streaming system with a camera system in each of our high school gyms and stadiums, and we were able to sign an agreement with a company. It's called Pixelot, and they have agreed to supply cameras. It's automatic cameras where nobody has to manage the camera. It automatically follows the game. It records it. And it streams out to parents or family members who they can either get a game subscription or an annual subscription. Of course, that money goes to the company, but the schools do get kickback on how many annual subscriptions they sell. And then they can also video their practices, and the coaches can watch them. They can do school activities where they can share that out at no cost. So there's a lot of benefits to this. They're putting in the equipment and the installation, which was originally, it's about $5,000 per camera. They're doing that at all 5 of our high schools at no cost. So they're banking on the idea over the next 5 years. They're going to get enough subscriptions. It's going to pay for the equipment. So we'll see how that goes. But we think if we move forward and we still have trouble, like right now, we can only get 25 fans in and not even really 25. That we're going to need to stream if that doesn't change. So hopefully that will help with the parents being able to view games at the stadiums and in the gyms if we're not able to increase that number of attendance. So it's 6 to 8 weeks for installation. So we've got that on the list, and hopefully they'll start installing those soon.
Dr. Segal, so it's a revenue sharing.
It is.
So Jeff, what percentage or what might we get out of that?
It's $69 for an annual subscription, and we get $20 back after we sell. If we sell somewhere between, I forget the number, 50 to 90, you get $20 back. If you sell 90 to like 300, you get another dollar value back. So it increases. I don't anticipate many schools really, I don't know that's where they're going to get a lot of money from. I think what they can make money off of is there's an opportunity where you can get businesses to go in and sponsor, and the business logo stays on the streaming. And so you can get businesses to support it that way. And that 100% of that goes to the school.
Would the technology allow a football field to be cameraed?
It does. Mm-hmm.
So that's where the money could.
Yes.
So are we doing football fields?
Oh yeah, every football stadium.
Wow.
And is that number
that.
you just shared with us, the number of subscriptions, is that per school?
It is per school.
Okay.
It's individual per school.
So are those cameras movable where they can go, I mean, when you have a football game, and then will they move it into the
No.
gymnasium for a basketball game?
You have two
And then-
choices. There is one that's, you can move it. You can move it from site to site, or you can get them mounted. And the ones that are automatic have to be mounted. So the ones we're getting are the automatic ones that have to be mounted. So we're getting them in all main gyms and all stadiums. Of course, we realize that we have soccer fields and we have baseball fields and we have different things that don't have cameras. So currently, this company is at capacity. So they're offering this to all schools in the nation, but they're only offering you 2 per school. They're not even doing middle schools. So once they get to the point they feel like they can meet the need, then they're going to open up for purchase. So some of the schools we've talked about, Booster Club, the school, they could all go together and maybe purchase a camera if they wanted it on other fields. So,
Are we leaving it up to the principal as to which 2 facilities get cameras?
we've pretty much said main gym and in stadium, football stadium. Because the football stadium, you've got soccer, lacrosse, you've got several sports that can come in there. You've got basketball, volleyball, girls and boys, sometimes wrestling in the main gym.
Where were you going to put one on the golf course?
Yes. I want to watch you swing the golf club, Tim.
You don't want to watch me swing.
Like Charles Barkley?
What's that?
Like Charles Barkley?
He's probably better than me. I'm terrible.
Yeah, they've already addressed that. They're gonna share the camera, and then they're gonna
Who
let
gets the
those
extra?
schools purchase another camera at very reduced cost.
Okay.
So, after they open up sale of cameras. Any questions about the athletics?
Sounds interesting.
No, but I don't know if this is a time to, or where your thoughts are after our 45-minute deal, if we're still there or not. But I'd love to see us think about January 1, maybe pushing back just a little bit, and if nothing else, play Roanoke County teams for the winter sports. And my thoughts are that if you've got a kid that's a senior, they may never, ever experience a varsity basketball, I guess, if they play basketball. What are other winter sports?
Wrestling.
Huh?
Wrestling.
Wrestling. I don't know about wrestling. I know
That's a tough one.
But what's it?
Track.
Swimming and indoor track. Yeah.
Can I put you on the spot? I do. I'd love to know what you think about it. Look, it's making it real with, and I didn't want to puff, but and you can tell me to eat crow and go somewhere else. But I just wonder what you think about. I mean, is it something? Are we risking too much by talking about that? In that, if you take these seniors, again, I go back to they were juniors last year, and unless they were exceptional athletes as sophomores or freshmen, they never get the experience of a varsity, if they played only basketball or one of these other sports. And for the opportunity for 4 or 5 weeks, because then you go into the winter sports, fall sports. I get them all backwards. So, if we just rotated the Roanoke County schools for the winter sports, and then we lead into the fall sports, and then to the spring sports.
I guess my whole piece would be with the River Ridge. We have to all worry about our districts, and that would be the biggest piece we have to worry about. So that's a great idea, but I think we have to look at our districts to determine if that's something we can actually accommodate. So that's our biggest piece.
But I'm saying if we stay in this moderate or higher range, I don't see us playing unless somebody gives me some great poo-pah moment. But if they don't, why would they not allow us, if we're willing to do it on our own, to at least give a 4 or 5 week?
I'll weigh in since I'm the one who sent the email out that said, based on some parent feedback, that over time you learn a lot of things and your positions sort of change a little bit, and so that's why I raised the issue, and that's why I asked Dr. Morrow, is that it, the name? The $1 million question for me, and was, is that by allowing this, by allowing intramural sports, even though it might be with a lot of restrictions, 0 spectators and all the like, would that be contributing to the spread of the virus in the community? And she said yes. And so I can't support that. I can't do it. The analogy she gave is the advice they talked about with respect to Thanksgiving and the spread. We'd be just sort of doing the same thing. So I think I framed the question in a fair way. I talked about the anxiety that our kids have. I get all that. I understand it. But I also don't want to be the person who has to make a decision that might allow the spread of the virus in the community. So that's why I asked that last question that I asked. So I really couldn't support it.
So I guess I'll roll it off. If you two say you're out, then we're out.
I mean, at the end of the day, as long as we're in phase 2, what can we really, what can we really do anyway?
Nothing.
Dr. Scott, right?
It's conditioning, individual conditioning.
So, but as soon as we step into, phase 3, I would certainly be open to, because that is one thing we can't control, is what happens in, what's the spread, what's the conditions in other districts. And if we're preparing for a season, who knows how many games could get canceled if it's widespread in the New River Valley or whatever. But, could the backup be, like you said, play in our own schools as long as we get, but the way I see it, it's kind of a moot point right now, as long as we're in that VHSL
but
phase 2.
We still can't play, right?
You can introduce a ball sharing in phase 3.
So we could play in phase 3?
Well, we have to get to moderate. If we drop to moderate, we can play. And they can play 5-on-5 basketball in season if we get to moderate. But maybe something you could consider is, if I'm not real hopeful the numbers are going to meet us where we need to according to the date to get winter sports off the ground. I'm really not that optimistic. If the trends are going to happen, what they say they're going to happen, if they're going to go up after Christmas, I would say the end of January before we're going to see the 2-week effect after Christmas, right? So we're already coming off the end of January and it ends the 1st of February. So I'm not really optimistic that we're going to get winter off the ground, but maybe we could do something like intramural sports. If they miss their season, we could run it when we do open up for the winter or the fall and the spring.
They'll all be in the other sports.
They do cross over, but you could do maybe something at night.
It's a shame for
weekends.
Kids that don't that it doesn't affect, but
it stinks.
Yeah, well,
it
it's different philosophy, I guess. But anyway,
Tim, I'm not out yet. I think we need to continue to wait and see what the numbers do, and just hope that people listen to Thanksgiving and the numbers get back to moderate. And I want to hold out hope that we can get them out there. And I'd like to see VHL change. And the spring kids missed all of baseball, didn't have a chance.
I don't know where the madness
is.
Whatever.
I don't know.
It is what it is.
There's no good solution, obviously, but we can't pull the plug on it right now.
No.
I don't think.
Just keep going. Enjoy the ride.
Any other questions on 3.02? All right, on 3.03, update on the status of school schedule. Superintendent Nicely.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Just wanted to give the board an update on the information that we've been gathering. We have, we had hoped to meet with all the 4th and 5th grade teachers at all the elementary schools before Thanksgiving. We got sidetracked a little bit on being able to complete that. So we've got 4 schools left to do. We've really enjoyed those meetings. The teachers that we've talked to have been very student focused, which is what we would want to see and expect. In fact, I think people have been really good about saying, here's what we would prefer, but if we have to do something different, then we'll do that. That was definitely the attitude in probably all but maybe one school that we visited. People have a really good attitude about that. One of the things that we've learned is that with 16 elementary schools, we were a smaller division with 2 or 3 schools that were all like, I'll use Glen Cove as an example down the hill here, where they've got some very unique spaces, which we want to renovate, but right now their spaces really lend themselves to some different things we could do. Plus they have lower enrollment. If all 16 elementary schools were like that, we would be in a very different position in terms of what we're able to do. So that's one of the things that we're definitely learning in visiting the schools and talking to the teachers, is that the uniqueness of each school and just where things are. So the things that we're investigating are the availability of large spaces. We still have a few schools in which. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so we're not much closer on that, knowing the 16 schools.
We've got four yet that we weren't able to visit with yet, due to some scheduling issues that came up, which I'm happy to share afterwards. But we have 4 more we have to visit with. So, most of the schools at this point are using their cafeterias. Some are still not there yet, so some schools have more capacity on that front. We have no schools that are using their gymnasiums for classroom space yet. That is a question that we've introduced. And the feedback that we've gotten in talking with the teachers on that front has varied. Obviously, the pros with that would be able to fit whole classrooms in gymnasium spaces, which is a pro. The con is the fact that there's a concern, especially going into the winter months, with students being further restricted to just their classrooms as far as any sort of physical activity and PE time, other than going outdoors. So that which affects the whole schools. That's one of the cons that the teachers are bringing up and talking about that. The available staff piece has been interesting to talk to the teachers about. We know that the existing staff members that the schools has been at capacity. In other words, where we've used reading specialists to cover classrooms or other available people like that. That's being done. One of the things we've talked to the teachers about in 4th and 5th grade is options regarding do we follow the K-3 model where if they go 5 days a week, do we peel off some of the, do we combine some of the classes if they go into a gym situation in order to cover the online students? And that's been sort of surprising to hear the variation on that thought. At some of the schools, the teachers, very much would want to have those online students sort of peeled off and have designated online teachers like we've done in K-3. Other teachers have expressed that, no, they really feel like they've formed the relationships and know those students so well at this point, they would rather keep them. But, they'd probably go 4 days a week if they, were able to do that. So that's sort of varied from school to school in terms of what we've learned so far. As far as the trade-offs, one of the questions we've asked is, what's the trade-off of changing teachers at this point versus, the model that we're using now, in terms of how that's going with student progress. If they change teachers, either due to splitting classes or combining classes, going into larger spaces. And there's been quite a bit of variability on that as well. One of the things that has been a consistent part of consensus that the teachers have asked for is, they're really concerned about obviously bringing more students into the buildings. And we've talked about with the health department about that piece, and they share that concern as well. So this is definitely not something that we would do at semester right after the winter holiday in terms of entertaining something like that. But one of the universal things that teachers have asked for is if we could have some criteria developed to identify some more vulnerable students. If our students are just not getting their work done, and therefore aren't making good progress, if they could come in 4 days a week, kind of like we've brought in EL students and special ed students. Teachers universally have been very favorable toward that. So that's one of the next steps we definitely want to start working on, is developing some criteria around that, and probably give teachers and schools a lot of flexibility regardless, because we feel like that, regardless of what we're able to do otherwise in terms of having additional staff to split classes and do some of these other things, perhaps using the gym spaces. If we could at least do that piece and go ahead and make plans for that, I think that would be a good suggestion that came from the teachers. One of the things that I mentioned before that we're going to look at is bus capacity, and so we've gotten that information. We did like a week-long study to see where that was. For elementary routes, we've got 137 elementary routes, and kind of looked at what it would look like in combining if you added, fourth grade, for example, on even a 4-day-a-week basis or daily basis, would we have capacity of, for doing that. And out of 137 routes, about 124 would have that capacity. And so I feel like that's not a huge barrier, for us to consider in terms of, factoring that piece in, because, I feel like that with a margin of, 13 routes, if we could do some recombining of some routes and so forth, that might be an option. So I don't feel like that's going to be, a huge barrier for us as far as the bus routes go. The huge things right now, of course, is just, finishing the analysis in terms of talking with the teachers on, changing rooms at this point, going into the gyms, the impact of taking away the gyms on the whole school and what the impact is on the schools. Those are all trade-offs, as I've mentioned before. And I think that universally people don't like the idea, but at most of the schools, people understand that if that's what we needed to do, that that's something that they understand as well and would cooperate with, and we could do. So I'm not pessimistic about at least looking at fourth grade. It'd be something that we would want to look at probably toward the end of January if we decide to make that move, because you don't want to do it right after the winter break with the expected spike again. So that's basically where we are as of today on that, and we hope to finish up those other 4 schools as soon as Ms. Hogan returns.
Very good.
Excuse me, I do have a question, and it's a little related to the topic. I saw, it may have been on 60 Minutes or something recently, where the superintendent of the Hillsborough, Florida County school system talked about children that are gone missing as a result of, when I say gone missing, that they're not accounted for. There's like some 7,000 in Hillsborough County, and that's a huge district. But do we have any issue, or do we have a handle, for example, children who are just not turning in work? Our teachers can't get a hold of them. Principal or teachers try and reach out to parents. They can't make any contact. And so do we have that problem at all? And if we do, how much is it?
Yeah, I think that we were especially seeing that at the secondary level, which the hybrid Wednesday that we started at the end of October has made huge strides as far as getting some of those students back engaged, because
right.
you just have a proportion of the students that just won't do it. It's not a matter of can't, it's a matter of won't.
Right.
And they truly are the ones who need that somebody standing right over them saying, do this, now do this. And I think that's where
I guess my question is that if we've reached in that scenario, the teacher may have reached out to a parent. At least you've had a contact with a parent, and so you have a conversation. The ones that I'm worried about is, are there any that we just can't even locate? Is that, and if that's the case, what are we doing about it?
So that's where our school social workers get involved. So
Right.
it's just like on any other year, when students are absent, and the notion of being absent now is different than it was a year ago, because especially for students who maybe chose to go 100% online. So that's why it's that having the contact with them. Even on the hybrid schedule, having that engagement where you're laying eyes on is so important, just from keeping track of the kids. So the only way we can count or kind of gauge the absenteeism, so to speak, is the disengagement from getting work done.
Sure.
And that's where, the school social workers are making those visits and following up. And then that gets reported through the court system just like it would in a given year. It's just a very different kind of process this year.
Right.
So that's what they're doing right now, is following up with those kids.
Because it's generally going to impact a certain income level, I would think, generally, right? And they're the ones we really have to worry about.
Yeah, right, and there's a certain group that
we're crushing.
In a given year
Absolutely.
would have been your absenteeism problems. And so there is a lot of people obviously are doing 100% online because of health reasons. I'm not, negating that. But there is a concern that, some parents, and again, it tends to be more at the secondary level, I think, but who chose for the student to go 100% online because they didn't want the accountability of the attendance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like kind of an escape. And so that's why the social workers, it becomes really important for them to be engaged with them so that they're not
All right,
kind of falling through the
so-
cracks.
Good. All right. Thank you.
And then we focused on trying to get as many elementary school kids back as possible. Would anybody else have the seniors who are missing out on their senior year? I mean, is there any chance of trying to figure out for that second semester a way to just, and maybe I'm alone in this, but that senior year, I mean, is just, it's their last, for a lot of kids, it's so important, and I don't know if there's any way we could figure out a way to get more seniors in as well to finish out that school experience. Maybe it's not as important as some of those other grades, but I
think
sorry
all
for
the grade
seniors.
levels are important. I think the seniors are important for the reason you're describing. The challenge with the middle school and the high school schedule is that it's not that you're with this teacher for this subject, like all day long, like you are for like a third grade class. You've got this teacher for chemistry, you've got this teacher for algebra 2, and this one for French, and so forth and so on. So it's the complexity of those systems that make it not so that you can just say, okay, well, we're going to have you come in and do what? I mean, it's not, you understand what I'm saying? It's the schedule piece of the different classes they attend that make that not as simple as it is for third grade. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you don't want to.
Anybody else have any?
I guess my only thing is, so at some point, I know we're going to stall and get to the vaccine. Is there, now Fauci's coming out and saying we got to get these kids back in school. We're getting reports that on math they're way behind. We hear Mr. Butzer's point. I've heard it from many principals that, we're losing these kids we can't get in contact with, whether they're parents, whether they won't contact us. Is there any point that, does CDC weigh that in, or Virginia Department of Health? Do we ever mesh where do we just keep going with CDC and Virginia Department of Health, or how does that, where does that lead us, I guess? Or do we just wait for the vaccine and hope, that it's, a year down?
And those are questions that we, ask when we have our conversations each week with the health department, because there's a balance there, right, in terms of, what the proper, or, and I'm not sure there is a best approach. I mean, it's, the key is, and that's why I think it's been so important for us to keep our schools open. The fact that we did not even start the year 100% online, because, a lot of school systems that started 100% online, I'm talking about across, not just Virginia, but across the country, they've struggled to find that moment to start getting kids back in person. So, as frustrating and as challenging as even doing the hybrid schedule has been, I'm just so grateful that you guys supported starting the year in person, because if you remember back in August, things were spiking. And so when people talk about, schools needing to stay open, we're open.
No,
so,
I get it, and I'm not knocking, we're ahead, we're good, right?
Yeah.
And I know this is a societal problem, a societal issue.
Sure.
But I don't represent society, I represent Roanoke County. And so that's, that's my where I like to think focusing. And so, and I know we need to listen to Virginia, VDH, CDC, all that stuff, but I just wonder, we keep bringing things in and talking about it. I just wondered if that ever factors in, or if we just stay for VDH and CDC. Is that, I guess that's, at some point, do we ever veer from that, or we just stay with that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm going to make recommendations based on doing my level best, from an educational standpoint, based on all those factors you're talking about. And this is obviously something we've never done before.
And I guess my question is, do they consider the whole child? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I'm not. Obviously, they're important.
We talk about that, and I've got to give kudos to our health department because, again, it'd be really easy for them to say, "Oh yeah, as a proactive measure, you guys should shut down from here to Christmas or into January," because that's what has happened in a lot of places. Right. What our health department is, Ben, we have that exact conversation. Is, we as much as we'd like to do more, what we want to keep doing at least what we are doing. Right, versus having to backtrack and go to like 100% online, and not that won't happen. I mean, something could happen tomorrow. We could do that, but to answer your question, I think they've been really good about trying to help us understand the whole child kind of perspective and not jump the gun in saying, hey, y'all need to go ahead and shut down. They've supported and said, look, this is challenging. It's y'all's decision, but you're doing a good job. And so, I mean, I can tell you that they've been supportive with that. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think they could have said, look, no, we're just going to blindly do this, and y'all need to shut down. And they've not said that. And
I agree, we are doing a good job. So when I'm critical, I guess I'm frustrating that we can't bring the rest of our students along like we have brought, the K-3 now. Right. So in my thoughts, are if we are doing that, there's no substantial in-person transmission in schools. We just heard the doctor state that. If we have the space, if we can move that up, if we hear these reports, that Fauci are bringing, and the other, if you believe the media reports of, our kids, especially in math, are way behind now. I just wonder if, and then we bring into the factors that we've heard for the last several months about the whole child and what's happening, depression and being isolated and alone, and not having the release of coming to school and peers, and having some relatable direction from teachers, all that stuff, right? So, and I guess at this point, maybe I'm just, preaching just to hear myself talk. But the point is I guess we're waiting on the vaccine now, and I just worry about those kids, because we just said, so the poor kid, the kid that doesn't have parents, that doesn't, I've said this for 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is, that those are the kids that are just absolutely getting crushed under the whole societal thing. And I know we can't solve it, if Roanoke County goes back and 100%, but, at some point I think, I hope, and maybe they are, I don't hear them ever say anything about it, but I hope we're thinking about the whole child and the family equation and sector and all that. So, no, we're doing a great job, and I get it, and I get frustrated that we're not going a little faster, but
right.
It is what it is.
No, and I can just say, be as honest as I can, and say, since August, those are questions that we've asked, and again, even opening, there was a lot of pressure to say, things are spiking, y'all should go online, and we asked those very questions you've asked to say, look, we got to think of this in a balanced way. Let's open, let's do this thing like we plan to do, and then they've been really good about, saying, because of what you're doing, you've been able to keep it at bay in schools, and so they've blessed, plowing ahead with that. So, but I think it's because of those questions that you're bringing up, which I think are very important ones, that they've had that stance, and supported us in our efforts to keep doing that, because a lot of folks are still wanting us to steer away from that and go 100% online, especially during the holidays.
No,
and they're saying, oh, look, what you're doing is okay. So.
All right. Thank you.
Item 3.04, Human Resources Update. Mr. Jim Bradshaw.
You guys like to write these numbers down, some of them we haven't.
Thank you.
And I'll sit before I start talking, Chuck, because I know you yelled at me about that. Mr. Vice Chair, briefly on the front page, and I've labeled these pages now, so hopefully we won't get confused and staple them together, but we've only had one new resignation in the as far as COVID related of any of our areas right now. So I can go through the numbers, but there's nothing updated except for that one at the very top of the page. Any questions on page one? All right, page 2 is ever changing, and honestly, it changes daily. But so that's why we do it by the week. This is our FMLA and emergency leave. FMLA are the ones that teachers are out normally because of maternity leave, could be for surgery, those kind of things. It really is not COVID related, but they still count in the number of teachers that we're missing during the day, which puts a strain on our buildings and our substitutes and those kind of things. For the week right now, we have 18 teachers that are out. We have 1 IA that's out, 3 in nutrition, 6 in transportation. And when I do transportation, I combine bus drivers and bus aides because that's how Kathy and Jerry give them to us. So that's combined with both. 5 support. Now, support could include nurses. It could include guidance counselors. It could include basically everybody outside of the arena that's here. And then our administrators, of course, you know what that bucket is. And we have 0 out on FMLA emergency leave this week. Total on emergency paid sick leave or COVID leave. Now, these are the ones that are related because they've been told to quarantine. They may have family members that have COVID, or they may actually have COVID themselves or something like that. But that's this week. And again, these numbers are changing. We have 70 out this week. We have 39 teachers, 9 IAs, 5 in nutrition. We have 0 in transportation this week. So that's the first probably that we've had 0 in transportation in a long while. 14 support and 3 administrators that are out this week. All right. And then the EFMLA, that's the ones that are out due to child care. We're down to 1. I think if you recall, we may have been up to, I think our highest number there was 5 so far this year, but we're actually down to 1 that's out right now. This page is the one that changes, like I said, honestly daily, which is why I try to give you the weekly update. Any questions on that page?
So basically you want to add them all up, and we have 58 teachers who are out right now as a result of
That's correct.
COVID-related stuff.
Well, it could be COVID related, or it could be just
58,
normal.
right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
How does that compare to a maybe I asked this once before. How would that compare to, let's just say, a normal year?
Sure, that's a great question. And when we actually did an analysis on that, where we did 2 weeks, we're slightly higher as far as the number of teachers that are out, but it's not substantial like you would expect for COVID.
Okay.
For example, for the week, I think that a couple weeks ago I ran it, we were like 750 out this year, and last year, the week before it, we were like 690, and the week after it was like 780. So we're really in the same ballpark. Where our issues are substitutes and the pool that we're able to pull from to fill those. Because normally we run about a 90 to 95% fill rate. This year we're running about a 70% fill rate. And that's huge when it comes to the
Have you
difference.
seen an increase in applications for subs since we changed the rules?
We have.
Good.
A lot, actually. And
Good.
I've got training this week. I think it's on Thursday we have training. So we're actually trying to do training every week or every other week. Every time we get enough to do a training, or even if we need to bring in onesie twosies,
Yeah.
Jody Lee or myself, we're doing a substitute training because that's part of the process to get them through. And
That's
then
encouraging.
we're trying to get them in the classroom as quick as possible.
I do want to commend our teachers. I know Mr. Bradshaw had run that sort of absenteeism comparison from last year, so I really feel like our teachers are doing a good job of avoiding absences if they can help it.
Agree.
Unless they really have to, so I really commend them.
Yeah, because you see that if we have 39 out for COVID or whatever, that tells you that probably 25 made the choice to come to work where maybe last year they did. So you're exactly right.
How related to transportation is that? I mean, are we having all the mechanics and so forth
We still have to have them drive on occasions, and Chris might be able to give you a better, I don't want to put it on the spot right now, but I know I spoke with Jerry today, and Jerry's saying they're still driving more than what we would like, because one time was more than what we would like, because it keeps them from repairing the buses or doing those kind of things. I don't think it's as bad as what it has been, but again, I could be misspeaking on that.
Right now, as of today, we have 10 open positions, and we have 6 people on extended leave. So we're still substantially using the mechanics, and Jerry and Kathy are still also driving weekly.
Oh, wow.
Have we seen any, since our campaign of the bonuses for drivers?
We're hiring a new person next week. On Monday, we'll be starting.
So you
We're
got
seeing
10.
a little, but not as much as you would hope. I mean, you would hope to get the floodgates like we had last year. Last year we opened that bonus up, and I think we got 15 right away or something crazy. And this year we're getting applications, but on the next page you'll see most of them are not qualified.
So 10 open.
Correct. We have
With
10,
one.
and that's on page 3, Mr. Greenway. Near the top, unfilled transportation, you'll see we have 10 bus driver openings right now.
With one potential hire.
They'll be good. Yes, they'll start Monday.
Wow. So you got 9 spots that you're using mechanics?
Well, not necessarily mechanics. I know they're combining routes too, to make some of those things work. As Dr. Nicey was actually saying, the combination. And they look at that. I want to say daily, but that's probably not correct. Probably weekly to see what they need to do to make those adjustments. But we would love to put it out there. I know Chuck's done a great job of trying to get the word out as far as, the bonuses and trying to get applications. But it also takes time to get them through the process if they don't already have that CDL bus license.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Questions on page 2? Okay, page 3, briefly, the unfilled IAs, you can see here, we're actually doing better, but again, that fluctuates as well. I actually had 2 resignations today, not COVID related, but just they leave this time of year. They tend to leave before the holidays or right at the holidays, so that number fluctuates a lot. Transportation, we briefly spoke about a minute ago. We do have 3 bus aides out as well. We would love to get more substitutes, but as soon as we get them in a substitute and they can actually be a substitute, then of course we're trying to get them hired full time. So they don't stay as subs. We do have a few that just say, I only want to do it on a limited basis, and we have those, but again, it's not nearly enough that we have there. Nutrition, this number was at 30 a few weeks ago, so we're down to 20. Rhonda and her team are doing a great job in generally getting those hired. We actually have the 2 at Horn, you can see right there that hopefully we're waiting on background checks so we can get those in as quickly as possible. So we're doing much better there. This is a typical, we normally run somewhere between 15 to 20 vacancies in nutrition. And that's on a normal year, that's not on just a COVID year. So I feel like we're in that range right now.
Very good.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Item 3.05, Equity Team Overview. Dr. McClung and Ms. Winbush.
I just want to say as we're coming up here, a former graduate of Hidden Valley High School, Jacob Gerald, had reached out to me and said, I can see you all there. I said, well, you just better watch because your principal and I are going to get ready to share some information. Chuck, can we stand?
Jacob Gerald, the mayor.
Chuck is pointing to me and I'm trying to figure out. Are we good to stand?
You can sit, yeah, you will sit.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are excited to share with you guys a little bit about our equity team this year and how that came about because we're doing some really interesting things in the district. So about a year ago, every school division had to name an equity coordinator. So Ken asked me if I would serve in that capacity, and I said, sure, of course, it goes hand in hand with PBIS. And little did I know, Lori and Ken were also having some conversations.
So sure, I want to first say thank you to Dr. Nicely for having an honest conversation with me in the summer, of course with the climate of our society at the time. He gave me a call and we talked for a very long time and he was telling me some things that he saw we needed to change and of course he asked my perspective and I gave him some of my perspectives. And based on me being in the county for 17 years, there's been a lot of things that I've seen and he asked me, what can we do? So we decided to talk about the equity committee coming back together. That used to be the diversity committee. When I first came on in Roanoke County about 15 years ago, I was part of that diversity committee. And we wanted to change it and make it pertinent to what's going on in society today. So he talked to me and he said, the first thing I need to do is you and Jessica have to work together. And I said, great. And so this goes back to
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So when he told me that, I said, absolutely. So I went back to work, and I thought about it, and, you know, me and Jessica had some ups and downs, being honest. And I thought to myself, if we really want to do this important work, we have to have a great relationship and trust each other. So I took it upon myself to call Dr. McClung and kind of took off guard. And I said, I want to work with you, but I want us to trust each other. So she said, well, what do you mean? And I told her. I said, well, just want to go back to a time where we had a little conflict. And I told her about the conflict, and she paused. And for many of you who know Dr. McClung, if she pauses, she's thinking about something or something's getting ready to happen, one of the two. And so once I told her my perspective, she totally got it, and then she gave me her perspective. And we had a bond.
Neither one were wrong,
No.
but we had our own bias and thought process that is just instilled in us. So, and for 2 years, I've been hesitant to work with her.
And I've been very hesitant to work with her.
And
But now we talk every day. So.
I know. So, Dr. Nicely, be careful when you ask two women to get to work on a team. So what was great about that first conversation is diversity and equity are hard things to talk about. It's a hard topic. Everybody's afraid. They're walking on eggshells. They're afraid they're going to say something that's not politically correct. And having that one conversation that did take about an hour and a half, I'm not going to lie, helped us get over the hump. And I can't tell you how much I've grown and learned about me, about equity and diversity in general. It's opened up, and then it's also, just from one conversation, has enabled me to have conversations with several other people, and I'm able to see a whole different perspective. And I think that's how you make big change in a school division of our size. We can't go in and have an in-service and be one and done and say, okay, we're all happy and we're all going to be inclusive, because it doesn't work that way. Systemic racism is something that's been in place for years and years and years. And I am tickled pink with the work we're doing. So we work together well now, though.
Yeah, we're very well. It's been great.
I call her my partner in crime.
Yeah.
So we have a trusting relationship.
Absolutely.
So our team is called the Equity Planning and Leadership Team. And it's the only team that I've ever had where people keep calling and saying, can I be on this group? Can I? And I'm like, there's never a committee that you establish where people want to be on it. But we've got people, and a lot of
we
people.
started originally with Dr. Nicely gave me a list of different people that he would like to be on the committee. It was about 7. So we started in June with 7 people, and now we've grown to almost 22 because so many people have seen some of the work we've done in the last 6 months and the impact it's had in the classrooms, had some conversations with different people, and like I've said, because we took the time to listen to each other, the impact we're having right now, other people are seeing, and they're having conversations with other people. So it's been great. So that's one thing I want to say about that is this work we've done in 6 months has really made an impact, and people really want to know.
And nobody wants to be on a committee or team that doesn't get anything done.
Yeah,
Let me share how it all connects in our division. First of all, our strategic framework and our comprehensive plan. PBIS is a huge piece of that. It has to do with culture and climate in our schools. And we have 3 components we work on: safe, respectful, responsible. And if everybody follows those 3 tenets, then life is going to be pretty good. So with that, we have a focus, and I've shared this briefly with you all before. There are 7 areas that we're working on: social emotional trauma, school safety, bullying, signs of suicide, equity and diversity, and substance abuse. So, I just wanted you all to know who we're trying to represent. Our kids are very, very diverse and different in our school division. We have kids who are athletes, we have kids who are into robotics, we have kids in advanced classes, we have kids who are homeless, we have kids who are disengaged, we have kids on the SAC. So we want to make sure this group takes care of all of our kids and our staff members for that matter. Whoa, I got excited. Okay. The focus is kids. I need you all to know that everything we're doing has our kids' best interest. We don't want any kid to feel marginalized. and our school climate data survey that we've gotten through our PBIS efforts have shown that certain populations don't feel as connected. Specifically, maybe some biracial students, our LGBTQ population. We know that mental health issues are compounded when kids don't feel connected. I mean, when you look at the school shootings that have happened, a lot of times they don't feel that they have that connection in schools. And the DOE climate surveys have identified some areas that we need to work on. So I just want to give you some examples. This is really simple. 4 is the highest score you can have, and I took 1 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high, just so you can see how the data stands out. At this school, the smallest bar is multiracial, and that's our biracial students. So they are not feeling as connected in our school climate survey as our Hispanic students at this school, even our black students, our white students. So all this information does is give us pause to look at that. Every school's data looks different. So here's a middle school. Middle school, this is ethnicity as well. At this school, black students and biracial students aren't feeling that same level of connectedness as some of our other students. And at this,
can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Can you just define connectedness? What does that mean?
it's all about your school climate, how safe you feel in the school, relationships. It's all about that school culture. And I'm happy to share with you all what some of the surveys look like. Any of our PBIS schools, we survey all the students and all the staff.
I think this is just one school, not all the middle
Yes,
schools.
these are
not
just
all the
single
middle schools.
schools.
Okay.
And I think it's big about the relationship piece. And that's
how they
something.
feel connected to the
Yes.
school community and
Yes.
culture.
Yes, because we don't want to make assumptions. What I've learned is that's not a good thing to do. And all PBIS does is takes a data source and then presents it to the staff. It's not a principal dictated decision. And they say, let's look at this, let's talk about this. Why do you think some of these groups are scoring lower? And do we need to do anything about it in this school? And your teachers and your leadership teams, your administration band together an action plan. So at this school, again, it was biracial and black. This school stood out to me because their Hispanic population was significantly lower. So they're all different. PBIS isn't a canned program. It's something that we look individually at our schools. Now, when we move forward to sexual orientation, we don't ask that of elementary school students. But middle school, there is a distinct, the kids who associate as gay, lesbian, or bisexual do not feel as connected. At this middle school, here's a high school example, same data. So this year we're able, because we have so many schools who are getting data for us, that we now have a division license that we can look, as a division are there areas we look at. So I just wanted to show y'all just an example. We are not just working on race, and I'll share with you, we're working on religious differences, we're working on people with disabilities, we're working on a lot of things. So Chuck, can you, last year, we pulled Byrd High School students together, Hidden Valley Middle School students, and Northside Middle, and, did I miss one, Chuck? I can't remember. We pulled students together, and we had students look at the Virginia Department of Ed climate survey, and this is a synopsis from one high school about what they had to say from the data they saw in the state.
25% of students have considered suicide. Yeah. A really big percentage.
Why is that surprising?
Just because, like, in like our day-to-day lives, I feel like we don't encounter that.
Yeah, that'd be like, how many students are in here right now? 20?
Yeah. That'd be like a fourth of that.
So it'd be like 5 students in this classroom killing themselves.
Or
considering killing themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a quick question. So far, what's been the most surprising thing that you've learned from this data? What's the most surprising?
Probably that the suicide rate in the school is higher than the state average, which is kind of like overall, since the state's with everyone and not just Byrd.
Why is that surprising? What makes that surprising?
I feel like overall as a state, more people, you think not just one school would have way more than everyone.
That's real quick here. What's been the most surprising bit of data that you've discovered so far?
I
can't read it upside down.
Probably that 25% of students thought about suicide in our school.
Yeah.
That's a good chunk. And like, I didn't expect that. I thought kids were a little happier than that.
Yeah.
What makes that surprising?
Just that's a really serious thing. And if you put it on a survey and it's a high number, like 25%, like that's kind of serious to think about, you know?
You don't like people don't always show. Like it's not always.
It's not always.
There's
on the
no
outside.
awareness about it.
Yeah.
And we don't really.
I guess real quick, what's been the most surprising bit of data that you discovered so far?
The suicide, considering.
Kids are looking at data, and it's so important at the secondary level to let your kids see the data. They can come up with decisions and help implement the programming that we're doing. But this was all pre-COVID. So post-COVID, our kids who might not feel like they fit in, I think those numbers might be even lower now. But I don't want to make assumptions. So with that, do you want to share a little bit?
Sure. This is our vision, and we came together and we felt we needed to have a mission or vision. And our first vision is equity, of course, is to create an inclusive environment for all by changing hearts and minds. We came up with that because that's truly what we're trying to do, is change people's hearts and minds. Because in order for our kids to feel safe, our staff has to feel safe, it's everybody feeling like they belong to our schools and our communities. And so we're going to focus on areas we feel that make people not feel like they want to come to work or they want to come to school. And especially in these times, we have to do all we can to make sure people feel welcome. And these are some of the things we wanted to work on. So some of our focus areas, of course, is race, sexual orientation, mental health, disability awareness, and, of course, the religious differences. So these are all areas we're looking at right now. And our mission, of course, is to dismantle and disrupt racism and inequity in Roanoke County Public Schools. And our goal is to educate others and make them aware. We're doing professional development. We're doing race relationships and connectivity activities. And, of course, our recruitment and retention of minority candidates. So these are some of the things that we felt are things we could tackle right now. And I know we're in a different time, but these are things we can still work through. So these are some of the things we've been doing. Mm-hmm. So we've come up with an action plan. So Dr. McClung,
and
you
Lori
want to talk
didn't
about
want to pat her own back, but she had the idea of a reception for our minority new hires, because what we found when we started looking at the data from the HR department, when we are able to hire minority candidates, they don't typically stay because they don't feel that connection with other people who are like them. And so that's why we had the reception that you all participated in. And that was Lori's idea. We're going to follow up with that. We're looking at translation headphones and ways that our parents who speak different languages can understand what's happening in meetings. We've surveyed all of our administrators to try to figure out what are the needs in your school. What do you think is going on with equity in your building, and how can we help? We worked in partnership with Ben Williams' office and Chrissy Schleicher-Maloney. We came up with a document about the election to make sure all of our political views didn't get too hot and pull in all these negative vibes in our schools. We wanted to be proactive with that. We've also been asked by the instructional department to give feedback on advanced classes and pre-AP classes from an equity lens. And we've talked, how can we target our 5th grade students? Maybe our African American students who aren't taking or signing up for those advanced classes. How can we get in with those families when they're younger to put them on a different track? We want our kids to be successful. And we're doing awareness activity with principals at every meeting. They're short, sweet, and actually very enlightening. I've learned so much, and then it's not something for us. We don't say, Tim, I need you to go back to Benton, and I need you to do 5 different meetings with 20 different teachers. We're saying, here's an activity. Would you like to use it in your school? Do you need our help to do it? And if you do the activity, can you share with us how it went? And it's different in every school. Lori,
can you do those now?
Oh, I'll do one with you at the next meeting.
Well, no, I mean, are you having those meetings in the schools now?
Yes.
Even with.
Yes. We're not going to let COVID stop us from doing good work.
And I'll just speak to mine. When school started, of course, we did all our meetings through WebEx. So what I did was I broke my departments up, and so they were in a smaller group. So they were able to do one of our exercises about privilege. within their departments, and it was a small group, and then I brought them on WebEx together, and we discussed it as a group through WebEx. So we're finding ways. COVID is not going to stop us.
So the kids
and so
are
we're
being
finding
able to
ways.
We're doing awareness with the principals to take back to their staff right now. In the meantime, we're researching some effective staff development that's been done in the past with equity countywide for students and for teachers. We don't want to get something that's not going to be high quality, and so we've got some ideas. We're working with, it's not Harvard, it's
Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. We're looking into some ideas to do staff development, but that's just one piece. So with that, here are some things that are on our action plans still.
Recruitment and retention, again, we're working through that. I think when I was looking at our data, when I was first given this task, we have 4% that apply to Roanoke County schools. That's our biggest issue right now. We can't even get people to apply, more or less to be able to interview and bring into our schools. Just a prime example, a lot of us are trying some different things. We've got a lot of long-term subs in our building. I have one right now who's a great young man who will be a great role model. Going to try to get him to go into special ed because I'm going to have 2 special ed openings. So we're trying to get people to think differently and try to work with our HR department to get some certification so we can get some people into our classrooms. So if we can bring people into Roanoke County, then we can retain them, because another thing we're doing is we'll assign a mentor to every minority hire. So each one of us has 2 that we check in on. I call mine at least every 3 or 4 times a month, leaves a message at 6 a.m. in the morning just to tell her have a great day. So we're all calling and reaching out to our different mentees to make sure they feel a connection, and if they have any issues, they know where to come. And so we're really working through that.
One of the things I learned, kids who are minority status, they don't have role models in professional positions all the time. And the research shows that if a black child has a black teacher or principal, they're more likely to go to college. And do you want to share your
Absolutely.
mom?
Of course, I had my mother was a teacher for 38 years, so of course I had that influence. But I can tell you right now, I can list all 3 of my black teachers from K through 12. So that's how important it is for our students to be able to see people who look like them within the classrooms, to give them an opportunity to see what they can be and what they are capable of achieving. So that's another big piece of this also. So we really, it's been fun work looking at the data and what we can do to move forward.
And we're trying to have conversations with people instead of like punishing people for saying something that might not be politically correct. At the beginning of the year, there were questions about the Confederate flag, about Black Lives Matter shirts, and we said let us have a conversation with people and make it a learning experience so people understand. So we're not stepping on people's toes, and we're starting those conversations. We're looking at holidays for different religions, and we have a solid action plan in place. So what we all know, and how can we support this? We all come from different backgrounds. We all want our kids and our staff to feel safe and secure in our schools. We want an inclusive environment that supports all kids. Relationships are the key. And here's what we have to ask of you. This, one thing I learned from Sammy Fudge when he came to our division, and he has been absolutely wonderful to work with, but he said, I've never been in a school division that doesn't allow 12-month employees to have off for Martin Luther King Day. And this is one of the things our group would like to ask of you to consider this year. We can't change our policy at this point. Our policy, and I'm going to butcher this, but we have X number of state holidays that we can take, and right now they're all on our Christmas break. So this year our committee would like to ask you all to consider allowing 12-month employees to also have MLK Day as a day, and in the future we will change and add that day into our policy and then take away a Christmas break day so we can take vacation for that. I think it would just go leaps and bounds with.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll speak to that. I remember the phone call. I was sitting in my office, and he called me, and he said, what is this about us having to take Martin Luther King off? And I said, I've been here for 17 years, and that's what we always do. And he was like, I've never been in a division. And to hear how upset he was at the mere fact that he had to take that day, it really made me think. Yeah, it really made me think, ooh, we really need to look at that. And that was one of the things in my conversation with Dr. Nicely this summer when he was asking me some perspectives, I said that was probably one of the biggest ones that hit me, because I've been only in Roanoke County as an administrator, I thought that was the norm everywhere. But when Sammy made me aware of that, knowing he had been in probably 6 or 7 school districts, that kind of made me go, wow, he was upset about it. And so that was one of the things me and Dr. Nicely talked about this summer. And he was thinking, well, what other things are people grappling with that we don't know about? And I said, that's why we need to have conversations with people. Build relationships that people can be honest with you and say, this is something that upset me. And of course, we can then only build from that. And that's what I always say, if you don't know, you can't do anything about it until you know about it. So that goes back to that piece.
So if you can't tell, we're really excited and we're proud of what we're doing, and we'd love to ask you all. This panel is
Just
going to
press it.
stand by, but I'll touch it. Okay, sorry, that's what you were pointing. Jim kept pointing. I don't know what he's saying.
No, it's like, you're doing a great job.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And please ask some of your principals. You know, we have principals who are uncomfortable to do these activities in their school. I mean, and that's okay if they are. So if they are, we'll go in and help. I mean, our job is to support and make everybody feel comfortable and safe.
And I'll even speak to that. Since we've had this committee, I've had numerous principals call me and say, how do I deal with this? Or what should I do? And just for them to talk through it and have somebody that they don't feel is judging what they're saying or what they're thinking or giving their perspective, I think that has grown by leaps and bounds, because a lot of times I'll take a phone call and I'll be like, what's going on? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, well, this is what we should do, and this is probably the perspective. And I think that's helped a lot of our administrators be able to handle some difficult things in their buildings that in the past they would just, I'm just not going to deal with it because I don't want to upset anybody. So that's been another great thing about this committee. So thank you, Dr. Nicely, for that.
Thank you all for your support and letting us be creative and courageous.
Yep. Any questions?
This is actually Ed Equity Week in Virginia.
Yeah,
so
it
you're
is
kind
Ed
of-
Equity Week with the Department of Ed, yes.
I have one comment. So, Lori and I had a conversation, and so that was very rewarding to me, just because the key on the equity and openness is the openness. Because if you can feel comfortable with who you're talking to, and you can speak freely, and know that you may make mistakes or faux pas in what you're saying or how you're saying it or how you're addressing the situation, makes you feel so much more comfortable. So you made me feel much more comfortable in talking to you, about diversity and so forth. And the second thing that you educated me on was Juneteenth. I hate to say this, I mean, call me ignorant, which some people will.
I had never heard of
is that I didn't know the history of Juneteenth. And so to me, I guess for the black population, to me, that may be as significant, and Dr. King's obviously huge, but to me, that may be as significant, if not more. So that was enlightening to me. So I think this is a great committee. I think it's great work, and I think it's needed. And thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
well,
it.
Dr. Nicely probably deserves a little bit of credit here. And for two strong personalities like yourself to be able to get together, this is
And he knew that we didn't get along when he planted this seed.
equity team on steroids is what I consider this. And you guys are doing a great
Thank
job.
you.
So
Thank you.
keep
And
it
you know,
up.
I have a relationship with Tim because I'm in bed by 8:30. And it was 9:30 when he called me, and I was like, all right now.
Well, you said something about an hour and a half conversation, and I'm thinking, and I'm going to tell myself again, but we play cards every Thursday night with friends. And I said, daggone, I didn't realize you done took an hour of that time. I said, but it was really interesting.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 3.06, operations 30-day to 1-year plan. Mr. Chris Lowe.
Well, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. When I was hired for this position, Dr. Nicely asked me if I would do a 30 to a 1-year plan on what my plans are for operations and facilities. Is that better?
Yes.
Great. So one of the first things I wanted to do is have some communication with the stakeholders and occupants of our facilities, because in my opinion, when it comes down to it, our stakeholders, our principals, they're our customers when it comes to operations and facilities. We're here to provide them good customer service. We're here to provide them good custodial service, maintenance service, facilities. When it all comes down to it, if we're not providing those principals and their staffs good customer service, then there's not a good learning environment for their students. And so that was my number one thing. So it was crucial to me to be able to open up that line of communication and dialogue with the principals and let them know that what we need to do, we need to have that open line of communication so that we can keep things running as smoothly as possible. That first principals meeting in November, I jumped on the agenda for that, and we had a great conversation in the morning with the elementary staff, and then a great conversation in the afternoon with the secondary staff. And Dr. Nicely even crashed my morning, meeting, which was nice. In order to have that open communication, it's a two-way street, though. Not only do I need to know what's going on in the schools to keep them satisfied and happy, so to speak, I need to know what the issues are in the schools as well. So I need them to communicate with me. And we had a great conversation about that during that meeting, and I think that since that time, communication's been flowing pretty freely back and forth between myself, the athletic directors, and the principals, and they know that they've got support up at Central through our office, which I think is very, very important. One of the other things that is really important to me in this position is to provide a safe and healthy environment, not just healthy, but safe physically as well. And I think we do that by providing good facilities. And then the health aspect of it is good, clean facilities, especially in times like right now. I think that goes without saying. We want to also be mindful of deficiencies that are in our facilities. And the only way to do that is, to have that communication with the principals, because we're not in those schools every day. So it's important that they let us know about those deficiencies. But one of the things we are going to start doing is we're going to perform routine checks in each facility every 3 to 6 months. This is something so that we can walk through the facilities and not only be effective in keeping everything running smoothly, but it's going to allow us to spot any mechanical issues or things like that may become more severe if left unattended in the future. And that's kind of where we are at now when it comes to, which we'll talk about in a minute, is we're very reactionary on a lot of our maintenance needs, and I think that's been a big word in our department the last 2 years is reactionary maintenance, and we want to get away from that. So, continuing to streamline the audit process of the schools, ensuring that relevant maintenance needs are identified, cataloged, and prioritized. That in our maintenance, we're planning something that we're going to. I'm going to present to you after Jeff gives you his plan about something called Asset Essentials. One of our goals is to increase the preventive maintenance percentage versus reactive maintenance percentage. Right now, I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were 2% preventive and 98% reactive. It could be 5 and 95, but we are doing. We are not where we need to be. Let's say that. We're not where we need to be when it comes to preventive maintenance. And so we need to get there, and we believe we have a good plan set in place to begin that. And also, of course, is one of the other major goals, not to manage our budgets. We have a budget that we need to manage, and we need to be able to utilize that budget for the entire year. We don't need to be shutting down maintenance in March because we ran out of money between July and March. We need to be able to continue to be able to do maintenance in March, April, May, and June. And so one of our goals is to be frugal with our budgets and transportation and warehouse, and it's all of them. But obviously the maintenance and facilities budget is the one that it really is what's keeping the facilities running. So being the director of operations facilities, I'm over 4 departments now, a little bit different than just the construction department before. Okay, so one of my goals was not to drown the first month I was in the position. So I want to talk to you quickly about transportation. As Jim talked earlier, the major concern at transportation right now is staff shortages. We have 10 open positions, and we have 6 positions that are long-term medical, which basically is just saying there are 6 folks who do not want to work right now because of the situation that the system we're in. So mechanics are driving, and our 2 supervisors, Jerry and Kathy, are driving. Or we are having bus drivers double up routes, which means they'll do a route and then run back out and do another route. Or we are shuffling like a shell game kids from one bus to another based upon occupancy of the buses, because obviously we don't want to overrun the buses with kids right now. One of the other things we want to do with transit, so on the staffing, I talked to Mr. Lineberger, and he came up. I mean, what a better person than promote a department than Chuck. Let's just be honest. To get out there in the public eye. And Chuck came up with the idea of Why I Love to Drive, Why I Drive series, where he has went out and on his own. It's been great. He's interviewing bus drivers, and they give a 20-second clip on why they love to drive. And so we're promoting these Why I Love to Drive videos on our Facebook pages. I believe they're on RVTV, or they're going to be on RVTV.
They are, and they were in the state of, if you saw the state of school, I can't talk.
State of the school address.
State of the school's address. In fact, I'll be ready to pull so you can turn some lights down so we don't blow everybody who's watching online.
When we have commercial breaks on our board meetings and work session.
During this, while people were watching before this, they saw various ones. So we'll pick, here's Dot, for instance.
I drive the school bus because I wanted to have some adult interaction as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to get out, and driving with Roanoke County, I have great students. I've enjoyed this nearly 20 years now, and I also like being a part of the community, and they trust me with their kids, and I enjoy being with my students.
So
she is a heck of a daughter in basketball too.
And I think these things are twofold, really. Not only are they getting the word out there that we need bus drivers, and it shows the $2,000 bonus, and that we're hiring, but it also lets those bus drivers know that they're not forgotten by Central. You know, they're over there in Salem, and they've kind of felt like the redheaded stepchild the last couple of years. And so we want to bring them back in under that operations umbrella so that they know that they have somewhere they can go and that someone's looking out for them. And so we've opened up the communication over there. We're really trying to recognize our bus drivers and our transportation staff and our mechanics who are just tremendous. I mean, these guys are getting there early. They're driving buses, coming back, working on buses and vehicles, then going back out and driving in the afternoon and coming back and finishing their day working on stuff. So they're just going above and beyond what their job duties call for, all because they love Roanoke County schools, and they want to see us succeed in everything to do. So some of my long-term goals, and these are very lofty goals for transportation, is I want supervisors supervising next year at this time. I want mechanics working on vehicles this time next year. And I want us to have bus drivers on every bus next year if we possibly can. And I'm just very hopeful, you know, that as things settle down, hopefully this spring and into the summer, that we get back to some sense of normalcy, and that this push that we're making, people will begin to recognize that being a bus driver for Roanoke County Public Schools may be beneficial to them. So that is our goals for transportation right now. We're also, you know, trying to reduce the amount of calls and complaints made to the superintendent or to the board members, because at times you guys have been getting those calls, or people up here at Central beginning those calls, and not to excuse anything, but usually it has a lot to do with people not being in the shop because they're out on the bus when a lot of those phone calls are coming through. So we're trying to deflect some of those calls up here when there aren't anybody in the shop, and they're going to come right to my office, and we'll handle them. And one of the other things is we always need vehicles. You know, as part of transportation, we have a fleet that is very. Mr. Kita was great at explaining how I don't want to say awful our fleet is, because I don't think it's awful, but it's definitely aged. And so one of the things we're trying to do is create some revenue on funding our fleet management replacement plan. And so we are inventorying all of our equipment, old buses, unused vehicles, and other non-used items surplus, so that we can roll that money back into our revenue fund and be able to start purchasing those vehicles at a little bit quicker of a pace. So that covers transportation. I'm going to skip maintenance real quick and go to the warehouse. You know,
One of the big things we have with the warehouse custodial going on right now is we're 5 months into a new custodial service. And, you know, they're having some, they're doing, I think they're doing a tremendous job, but they're also still having those hiccups of a new service. How we're going to get through this health COVID issue that we've got going on at our schools right now. They're working with us day in, day night. We have open communication with their management weekly. JJ Watkins is tremendous. If anybody knows, JJ's an excellent communicator. And she is, I mean, she's on them like, I mean, I don't even know the phrase to use, but nothing is getting past JJ. So our goal is to continue working with this company. We don't want to have to, a year from now, say they failed us and we need to start looking for another company. We don't want to do that. They're putting a tremendous effort in, and we're working together. We're helping them. Some of the things we're trying to help them with, for instance, all the dispensers in our schools are costing them a fortune. Just roughly $70 for a box of paper towels, where if they had another dispenser in those schools, in the schools, such as the touchless ones that we're now putting in, those are $30-some a box. So they're thankful that we're coming through replacing the majority of these dispensers, about 1,700 of them, for instance, but there's still maybe another 300 or 400. Well, they're willing to eat those 300 or 400 likely because it's going to help them generate more revenue and a profit margin, I should say, as the year goes on. So we're working as a good team with this new company, and we're going to try to continue that. And they're very, they listen to our needs or our concerns. And they react to those as well. So one of the things we need to do with our warehouse is we kind of need to begin thinking about determining our future direction. Because if you remember, our warehouse used to be a backup for our custodial services when we had a custodial service for 26 or 27 schools. We're down to 4 schools now. So our warehouse guys aren't delivering custodial materials to 27 schools anymore. They're delivering materials to 4 or 5 schools now. So we're going to reorient how our warehouse is operating over the next year to become more effective, less downtime, and get them back out into schools to help out more often. So we're trying, JJ and I are working really hard on trying to establish what our new goal and scope of work is going to be at the warehouse level. So I'm going to leave maintenance for last. So we'll talk construction. And I'm not saying it was perfect, but right now construction's moving. I mean, there are some things that we could do a little bit more efficiently, and we're working on that. But a couple of our major goals right now is getting Cave Spring High School closed out so we can get that project completed. We've already began the William Byrd High School programming process. As a matter of fact, we're meeting tomorrow for about 6 hours on additional programming. We're meeting with the science department, just each department individually, so that they can see what the plans are or concept plans are and what their needs are, so that the architects can start incorporating that information into their plan. And then when we get back after the new year, sometime in late January, February, we're going to have a very detailed 40, 50, 60% plans, schematic design for William Byrd High School. So, and then we should be at 80% design come April or late April, early May. We want to continue that. We have numerous capital and CMP projects currently ongoing, and I'm just going to be honest with you, some of those projects date back to 2018, 2019 CMP. So one of the good things about having the CMP postponed until next summer for this year is we're going to be able to get caught up on all these 2018, 19, and 20 projects. And Mike Kaufman is the gentleman that works in my office, and Mike is knocking out projects left and right. He's doing a tremendous job. And we're working with the maintenance department on a lot of the CMP projects, where actually Mike has taken a lot of those maintenance projects and we're outsourcing them, and we're getting that work done. A lot of the HVAC work, a lot of some plumbing work, and there's a list of playground type things we're working on. So we're trying to take some of that load off of maintenance by outsourcing it with our CMP funds that you guys have approved every year for the past couple of years.
Excuse me, Chris, did you hire a replacement yet for?
So some of the goals in construction by this time next year, 1 year, is we want to have all of our CMP projects from 18, 19, and 20 closed out, because next summer, if all goes well, revenue-wise, we're going to have, I see you writing that down, Mr. Linden.
Yes, sir.
Next year, we're going to have $2 million coming into the CMP, and that is about another 50 or 60 projects that we'll have running starting next summer. So we would like to get our backlog completed so that we have the stuff ahead of us working forward. All right, maintenance.
Let me ask you,
Yes, sir.
this is just a dumb question, and not to be critical of anybody at all. Why do we have the backlog? What's the root cause of the backlog?
Two people doing all the work. I think that has a lot to do. We had a lot of projects. We were near 120 to 130 projects at one time, and Mike and I were running every project for the most part. And I was occupied at Cave Spring High School 5 days a week.
Okay.
5 to 6 hours a day. So really it was Mike doing most of the work. Mike's been here over a year now, so it took him a little while to get acclimated, 6 to 7 months to get acclimated. But since that time, Mike has just started knocking projects off left and right, and he's really got a rapport with the local contractors. And it's, I mean, he's out of the office from 7 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, and he's just getting projects done left and right. We're utilizing, now that Dennis is working his days, we're actually using Dennis for his days to do some of our construction projects so that they get done a little bit quicker and a lot cheaper, actually, so that we can roll some of that money back into CMP.
So it was mainly staffing
Yes.
issues? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Mhm.
So, maintenance. That's the, we have, now when I say all these projects, part of those are capital maintenance projects as well. We have minor, major, and we have the capital maintenance projects. So we have current maintenance projects outstanding on the CMP that we're trying to get, just like I covered under the construction. One of the things we're trying to address right now, though, is the budget for the remaining part of this year. I think we have, we've spent 54% of the maintenance budget to this point, with still, we have 8 months left before the end of the year. So 54% of the budget's been spent in 5 to 6 months, 5 months. So now that will come back to us a little bit as we get through the holidays, and we're not spending those funds and fixing things through those 2 or 3 weeks off around Christmas time. And then things do kind of slow down on that end for the outside work in January, but it will pick back up again in February. But it has not been unknown for us the maintenance department, to begin to run out of funds in March, April, or even in May, and they have to slow down and take the credit cards away from the maintenance staff until the new year's budget begins. So we're trying to equalize that so that we're maintaining work throughout the year. And plus, one of the good things is we are saving a lot of money on CMP projects. And that money rolls back into CMP, so that allows us to keep work flowing forward and continue to knock even projects that were not originally on the list. So we're able to add work to the list. One of our big issues has been filling vacant maintenance positions. We filled an electrician job. We filled a plumbing job here recently. We filled an HVAC job, which was the one we really wanted to get filled about a month ago, and he left after 2 weeks. So we're back to 2 open positions at the HVAC level now. So still out there.
Did you
still
do an
interviewing.
exit interview with him? Do you know why he left or she left?
I did.
And
he was overwhelmed by the sheer amount of equipment we have, the many different brands. It just overwhelmed him. He's not the first one that came in here and left after a period of time. They said it's just too much to learn.
Okay.
Isn't that what also one of the things Mark, before he left, trying to condense and get us down to 3 or 4 different types of units so that make it easier to work on?
Yep. Yes, sir.
It's going to be a long process.
So we're trying to address those staffing shortages immediately as they open. And Jeff's done a real good job of interviewing, and like I said, he filled an electrician's job and a plumbing job here recently. So we're full across the board with the exception of HVAC right now at the maintenance department. We're just trying to establish, Jeff and I both are trying to establish the understanding of the current budget and the forecast for the rest of the year, as I just discussed. But here's the big thing. You know, Jeff and I both, we want to, and this is something Mark instilled in us, and we're really appreciative of him for that, but we really do want to continue that mantra of getting into where we're doing preventive maintenance instead of reactionary. It makes no sense to just be reacting to everything and spending all of our funds on fixing things that could have been taken care of ahead of time before it ever became that. So if it's okay, can I go ahead and jump into asset essentials before Jeff speaks, since this kind of bleeds into that
Sure.
on the other agenda item?
Yep, that's fine.
We currently have a system called Maintenance Direct, which is 15 years old. Think about your cell phone 15 years ago, okay? This or your Sony PlayStation 15 years ago. That's the software we're using right now to put in work orders and track maintenance work orders for Roanoke County Schools. It's antiquated, it's clunky, it's hard to get around, it's not very user-friendly. At the time, it was fantastic, but we've been using that same system for 15 years now. So School Dude produces that program. They also produce a program called Preventive Maintenance Direct, PM Direct. And it's basically the same kind of software. It comes from the same manufacturer. It's separate from Maintenance Direct, so you would have them both together. And what that PM Direct does is it allows you to start inventorying your assets, which means all of our equipment within the system. And then we'll tag it with a name or a code number or a QR code. And then we have a history of that asset from that point forward. Now, PM Direct is also clunky and 15 years old, just like Maintenance Direct is. So we've talked to School Dude, and they have a new product out that's been out since spring of last year, and it's called Asset Essentials. It's user-friendly, and I could pass these around. Plan on doing that here in a minute. Let's see if you don't mind passing those around. So clearly, we don't want to get stuck in this loop of deferred maintenance every year. We want to improve our operations. So Asset Essentials is a platform on the cloud that combines Maintenance Direct and PM Direct all into one software program, and it's new and user-friendly. We're going to be able to use it. Our technicians are going to be able to use Asset Essentials. It streamlines all of our work orders, our workflow management, our work tracking and monitoring. It tracks our equipment and asset management. It maps where our units are by GIS. It schedules our audits and our inspections for us. So it will send a work order to, say, Jeff, and says, hey, this asset needs to be inspected 7 days from now. And so it's on Jeff's schedule. He knows that asset has to be maintained or inspected 7 days from now. It incorporates safety programs for our equipment. And we think that this is the software program that we need to begin that track to get from 2 or 5% preventive maintenance to 5 to 10 to 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and there's no telling how far we can go with that. I do not know what our ultimate goal would be, but it's a start, and we can really figure out where we can go after we get involved in this. We've met with this Asset Essential company, School Dude. I believe Jeff will tell you he was as impressed as I was. The ease of using it, all of our technicians would be able to get work orders on the spot where they're at. Everybody would have a smartphone with the Asset Essentials app downloaded. And if a work order comes in at that moment to them, they would have that work order immediately. So it's going to save us time from driving back to the shop, downloading, printing, moving back out. Also, it identifies every one of our assets, and so we're going to have a history on that asset. The air handler, for instance, we know that we've had this issue with this air handler, and we're going to be able to know what the issues are in the past and what the issues are going to be coming up forward. It actually has a predictability of when your assets are going to break down. I'd be interested in seeing how accurate that is, but if we follow the program the right way, and this is not an overnight program by any means, this is something that we would institute, and it would probably, we believe, take us a full year to get every one of our assets into the inventory. So the first year is going to be inventorying, working. Every time we hit a unit, we're going to be able to inventory that unit, add it into the software program, and eventually, once we get every asset into the program, we'll be set up on a regular maintenance schedule for every unit that we have. And yes, we're still going to be doing reactive maintenance, but now we're going to be doing preventive maintenance and cutting a lot of that stuff off. So we probably won't see the full results for about 2 years. It'll take a year to get everything in the system, and then a year to do some maintenance, and then after that, you're going to start seeing our work order loads requests or breakdowns start decreasing. So we're prepared to begin moving forward on this new software program at the beginning of this year. We don't want to wait until the new budget cycle next year. So we've been talking to School Dude, and right now, for instance, our Maintenance Direct program cost us roughly $8,000 a year. We also have something called FS Direct, which is the scheduling of a principal putting in, I need the gym operating at this time. We're paying almost $8,000 a year for that. That's $16,000 for those two programs. That doesn't include PM Direct. PM Direct would be about another $7,000 a year. Asset Essentials, which we can do all three of those things, with, we can do for $19,000 a year. And they're prepared to go ahead and give us a discount at the new year and give us a credit for our Maintenance Direct up to this point, or what we spent on Maintenance Direct. And we know that we can handle this with our current budget that we have right now. So we're not even prepared, we're not even requesting to come back and ask for additional funds from the school board to purchase this program. And the program itself, on a yearly basis, $19,000 a year, $20,000 a year, the whole goal is for that program to pay for itself after the second year. So this is our big step of Jeff and I moving in on the maintenance department, on moving forward with preventive maintenance. And this is the thing that's really occupied a lot of our time the last 30 days. But we don't want to put it off. This is something we want to jump into and get done. That way we can get our guys trained during some downtime if there is some coming up, because they are going to have to be trained. Change is not easy for anyone. We're going to have to give some training to the principals as well, because they will be putting these work orders in through this system. But again, they'll also be able to do it by their phone, their smartphone, or their iPad, or they'll be able to give that app out to other members of their staff if needed, such as ADs for work orders and things like that. So I think I mumbled long enough. I'm sure there might be some questions. I'd be happy to try to answer.
Do you guys feel that this is going to make you more efficient, leaner? I mean,
yes, sir.
It's not like you necessarily need our approval to do it, if you got the funds, but it sounds like these are things that we as the board and you and Mark have been talking about over the last 12, 18, 24 months. I mean, will this also help us track? Now, we seem to have an issue in the past tracking what we're spending.
I took a couple notes. I want to talk to Chris about a few things.
Sure, and that's something that's really great about this software program as well. As like every work order is going to have a cost associated with the amount of man hours it was worked on, and it's automatically implemented into the program and the cost for repairs. So we're going to be able to track our life savings cost on all these units with this software program, and what our maintenance cost has been on these units through the software program. So yes, that is part of the software.
Okay. Look, this is an area that, I have a little interest in.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So And none of which I'm about to say is only meant to help. But if you look at where the school system is with respect to its maintenance and facility, let's say, model, the school's about 30 years behind where it should be. And I'm being generous, it really is. And I'm not being critical. That is not anybody's fault other than the boards who were here previously or the people who were in the jobs previously. But here's the things that I think you need to be successful. And this is just me giving some advice, and it's up to Ken to you definitely need if you want to identify who you got to know who your customer is. Now, you mentioned it's your principal, but any facilities organization has to have a customer service measurement. There are standard questionnaires that are out there. I mean, they're easy to get a hold of. I believe that you're going to be joining IFMA.
Yes, sir.
Okay. IFMA is an organization that's going to provide you with so many resources that you can pick and choose from that I think are going to help you out. I think that as a director, you need to know how satisfied your customers are about what you do. That's cleaning, that's maintenance, it could even be transportation, but I think you need to survey your customers. That way you don't have to wait for a call from a principal or somebody complaining about something. You're going to have a measurement that you can actually use and say, okay, in this given building, here's my level of customer satisfaction. I used to have an objective about 90% satisfied in my organization. Now, it took time to get there, but I really do think you need that. I think you need to understand and really know what your workflow process is. And I know you started to talk about that, and I think this system that you're talking about is going to help you get there. But you need to be able to, at least in your mind, flow chart your workflow process. What's the whole process from the time a person, what I found when I've gone into schools, is there really did seem to be a disconnect with the person who was, for example, I would have teachers come up to me and complain about a unit in their room. So then I do a little research and find that the principal didn't even know about it. Or there was some confusion as to who would even input the work ticket, okay? So that was the first problem. And then, how do you know that it was ever even completed? So I think that's a basic that you need. You need to be able to understand your workflow process. And without a doubt, you have to move to a model of preventive maintenance. I mean, that's what you have to do. There's no doubt about it that as any facilities organization worth its salt will make that a priority. The thing that I would ask you to do as a director that would help the board make some decisions to help you is I think you need to be the person to identify what are the requirements that you need to be successful, right? What are they? And don't be afraid to ask. I'm not so sure that people were comfortable with asking for more funding or in the past, or they thought the answer was going to be no. That's why we are where we are. That's why the buildings are the way they are. So I would look to you to identify your staff requirements. For example, the reason I asked you the question about why are we behind in projects, I thought I knew what the answer was. It's staffing. I think you need to tell us that and say, look, here's the problem. Here's what I could do if I had more staff. So I'm just asking you to come to us with whatever the requirements are that you think you need. For example, you mentioned you were hopeful that you could be somewhere within a year from now. Well, I think you need to tell us what would it take to get there. What do we need to do to help you to get there? So those are just some things that I would just suggest that you really need in order to get where we want to be, because we're still not there yet in my view, and I know you know that.
Yes, sir.
Right? And Mark knew that. But I think you have a board support here that we want to get this stuff fixed, right? I think that's there, but you need to tell us what it is.
Yeah, and as Mr. Moretz said, if you don't need any money from us, I guess we don't have to take any action on it, and if that's what you want to do.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Maybe Dr. Nicely's blessing would be in order, but other than that, go for it.
gonna flow into Jeff's,
Sure.
Jeff and work, that's correct?
Well, I don't think everybody
Okay.
knows. I'm going to introduce him. This is Jeff Meacham, our new maintenance supervisor.
Yeah, item 3.07, maintenance 30-day to 1-year plan.
Not really new. I've been affiliated with Roanoke County Schools since 1965. I've been either a student and/or an employee since then, and I've worked under 7 superintendents, 6 directors of facilities, and I'm the 4th maintenance supervisor. So I've been around a long time, and so I'm kind of familiar with the history of how we got where we're at. And I will say that we've all inherited a big, huge mess, and we're all in this together. And I will say that I want to thank you as board and to Dr. Nicely. Out of all the different regimes I've worked under, you have been the most supportive, and you've really helped us a lot. You see our plight, we're all in this together, and you've helped us a lot, and I thank you for that. But you asked me for my plan, and I was reminded of a story years ago about Abraham Lincoln when he was asked if he was given 6 hours to chop down a tree with an axe, what would he do? And his response was, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. So even coming in here kind of knowing everything, the history and all, I still wanted to get a grasp on everything that was going on when I came in here. And one of the things that I have noticed over the years that you've touched on is that there has been a terrible lack of communication. And so I started off right on day 2, had a big meeting with everyone, and I said, here's the way we're going to do things now. We have people that are watching School Dude, as crude as it is as a program. There's still people that look to see the status, as Mr. Butzer said, on work orders. And a lot of times someone would do something, they would order parts or whatever, and they'd never put anything in there for anyone to see. Well, one of the things that I've had everyone start doing since day 2 is that everyone goes in, and when they go out and work on a job, and especially this applies to like plumbers, electricians, and HVAC, that you put in what you did that day, where you left off at, and at least we know where we're at. And so that if you're off, now you could be in isolation or in a hospital with COVID. We have to, in the past, we've always had to reinvent the wheel every time that someone was off. We'd have to track them down to figure out what they had done. And I've done HVAC work for a long, long time, 40 years. And one of the things I hate worse than anything is going in behind someone else who's torn something apart and you have no clue what they've done. You didn't see what it looked like before you ever got there. So I'm trying to eliminate all this redundancy that we're having to do. And that's one of the things that's killed us, is we're doing the same things over and over again. So I'm trying to move away from that. And a lot of that starts with good communication, because it prevents divorces and wars and all kinds of things if you effectively communicate. And the people in the schools, Dr. Nicely, Chris, or whoever, they can just look now. Hopefully they're still doing this like you're supposed to, but they can look at this and say, oh, okay, a parent's called, I can look at this work order, and okay, there's what it is. You don't have to track the guy down. This will get better with the new program we're talking about, because we definitely need the help there. So improving communication, and it also helps the lead technicians to be able to assign their work and what have you, because they know what the guys have done. The next thing that you have to understand where we've been for a long time. Maintenance has been kind of discouraged for a long time. I'm telling you, it's been a tough place, because things are breaking down so fast, and a lot of times all we ever hear is the bad things. We don't hear, people don't see the things that you've done. They see the bad things, and I know we all catch it from everyone, and everybody, wants their problem taken care of immediately, but you're trying to work with very limited staff. So one of the things that I tried to do is begin to build the staff, because without them and without their allegiance, I'm wasting my time. So the first thing I did is, after we had our meetings next week, I said, one thing that I think is very important, I went and bought some food, and I said, we're going to have a cookout real quick at lunch. And I said, we're going to do this because if there's something about sharing a meal with people that seems to just build camaraderie. And so these guys, they were all beaten down there, but when they found out we were going to have a cookout, they got really excited. And they started showing up at lunchtime, and some of the retirees came in and did all the cooking. They brought extra food. We had shrimp and all kinds of stuff to go with their hamburgers and hot dogs. But there was a whole attitude change right after that. And the guys, I believe they would follow me to the ends of the earth right now, because they're like, we like how things are going. And I just wanted to be recognized for what they had done. So it was a good investment in time. So once we did that, I started building the team, working with the team that it was already got, to try to change to get them motivated again, to get them encouraged and see that we're on a mission together and that we're working together, and I'm trying to work with them. Once I did that, we did have those vacancies, and they've just been kind of sitting there for the longest time, so I thought, okay, I've got to aggressively go out here and beat the bushes and do some recruiting, and started talking to different people, and fortunately for us, bad for Roanoke College, they started laying people off, and we got some really good experienced people, and they appreciate working here, and we got a plumber from there. We may have a guy to do filters soon. He's going to give us an answer after the Christmas break. We hired a young painter. He's really good. He's not scared of heights or anything. And our other painters are getting older. It's working out great. We got a really good electrician. And so some things are happening. The guys are like, oh, man, we're finally starting to get some help. And I actually have an HVAC guy that's going to start who was laid off at GE, and he's going to start right after Christmas. So, some good things are happening, but it's still slow, and things are in bad shape. I will tell you, in that time that I've been affiliated with Roanoke County, I did leave from 2013 to 2017, and I worked for Train Building Services. And I came back just for a lot of reasons. I missed the people here, and I just missed, this is kind of like my home. And so I came back here, but I will have to say the first day I came in here, I wanted to throw up when I came back. I just saw the condition of things, and just the building, our shop hadn't been painted in 25 years and still hasn't yet, but it was just a bad attitude. And I'm like, okay, I got back out with the equipment. I'm like, okay, I'm back with my little family here. And so I started getting back to working and everything with the equipment, and I'm like, okay, I'll be all right now. And I tried to start building a team then. But now the guys are changing. They're seeing they're not quite as discouraged as they were. Another thing that's happened is we have no inventory of resources. We don't know what we got. And so I'm trying to do something about that. And you go in to look at our shop, and it looks like a bomb went off in the old warehouse. And so I'm trying to get that organized in our spare time so we know what we have. And then, like Chris was talking about, we need to get organized when it comes to our data for our units. And HVAC, you got a data plate on every unit, and that tells you everything. But we have to have a way to be able to access that information. And when we put it in this new program, one of the complaints that new people have is they come in there and they're like, man, where's any information on this? Any IOMs or anything, installation, operation, and maintenance manuals. They don't have any information. Well, if we have this, what we can do is now they can go and look at that data plate, and we can actually attach PDFs and what have you. And now the guy's got a fighting chance to be able to work on the units, and we save a lot of time. So I'm trying to use, technology here and inventory our resources, see what we've got, track history on the units and everything, see when we need to replace things, and to bring when we come and ask you for money, we can bring you a good, well-stated case. We can show you what we need and have information to back up what we're saying, and we can show you that it'll save us money and downtime in the long run. And then, and Chris is kind of taking my whole speech. But anyway, here, another thing I want to do is assess liability, and this is something that I encountered here, and this is why our budget's kind of messed up. There were things ordered a good while back that were kind of in the pipeline, and because of COVID and different things, they just happened to start coming in once I got on board. So now all of a sudden this stuff's coming, and some of it's really expensive, door stuff, locks, and what have you. And I mean, we've already promised that there's special order items and everything, and it has hit us pretty hard. So I've kind of tightened and everybody's working really well with me. We're tightening up to make sure that we get through this crisis, get the numbers to back where we need to be. But we've got a lot of things. I've also found out we got a bunch of problems that have been going on for a long time that we have got to address, and we are addressing that now. Like Mason's Cove, we got a problem out there with the filtration building. We've got all that worked out. We got CMP money on it, and we're taking care of it. So we're getting these things, we're assessing all the liabilities we got so that we can develop a strategy using what we got and what we know we've promised and what have you. And, then the other thing is, like Chris said, I want to go on the offensive. For once in my life, I would like to see us be able to go on the offensive rather than just always being in a reactionary mode. That's discouraging. And so if we can just begin, and it's going to take a while, given the manpower we have, we still don't have near enough, but if we could just somehow get off the beach and start pushing forward, and beginning to move, I believe we could see a difference. And we are doing that, and some of the things maybe you're not aware of, but we replaced every single air conditioning unit at Glenver Elementary during the summer, during the break when everybody was down with the lockdown. We replaced every unit there. The B building at Northside Wimber Middle School, we replaced every unit back there. Hasn't worked in years. We've replaced every one of them. And so there's a lot of things happening that people don't necessarily see, but we're beginning to slowly turn some things around. Another thing that I want us to do is we are trying to be proactive. Like, I had the guys go in and check, and I don't think it's been done in a while, but I was having them check all the heat exchangers in the gas-fired units on the roof. We found 18 units with holes in the heat exchangers. So we had to go and we hit CMP pretty hard, and we've ordered new heat exchangers, and it's taken a while to get them in, but we just got them in the other day, and we're going to start attacking them probably tomorrow. We'll take a bucket truck, set them on the roof.
May I ask you a question? Have you implemented a zoning system yet where the mechanics have certain buildings that they're responsible for?
No, that's never happened. I mean, Mark talked about it, and I think it's a great idea, but we just don't have staff to do it.
You're never gonna be successful unless you do that.
I
Because
agree.
what you just said to me is you had 17 units in our buildings where the heat exchangers had holes in them. That's the fault of the mechanic who works on that building, and I'd let them know about it. That's
Well-
unacceptable. That's what zoning will do for you. You guys need to tell us what you need to be successful. That's not successful. I mean, if you want to talk about pride of ownership and owning a building, how could they let that happen? I just don't understand.
See, as it is now, like I said, there's no one assigned to a particular
Well-
building. A guy goes out and he works on the problem that's there.
That's best
that day.
practice in any facilities organization. That's what you do. You have to do that. Otherwise, you said earlier you were upset coming behind somebody who did something. Well, if you have the zoning system, the person touches it, they own it. That's it. Nobody else. They own it. That's what you guys need to do, and let us know what you need to get there.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's never going to get any better.
I like that idea, and like saying, then also have that person as that first responder. It would save a lot of time for the guys that could be doing other things.
You're never going to get there unless you guys tell us what you need.
Okay.
Yep.
I will do that. And I will tell you, I won't come to you and ask you anything, and I probably will have to come and ask you for things this year, just the way things are looking, but I will not come and ask you unless we're going to use it properly, and this is going to be used with good stewardship. So, okay, so, and another thing too is I want to use technology more because a lot of my background is BAS, building automation, and one of the things is that we can use technology as like a force multiplier. One man that knows how to interpret data, he can actually do the work of like 5 men, and he can actually direct other people to go and take care of problems that may be lesser technicians, and we can get more done that way. So, so another thing too is I'd like to also do some staff development. One of the things that we lack around here, technology, especially in HVAC, is changing rapidly, and we never have any money to send the guys to do in-services to try to get, to get the knowledge they need to work on the equipment. For instance, Cave Spring High School, all those LG VRF units, that's pretty, new technology is still evolving, and we need to get a couple guys up to where they need to be to maintain that. So that is my plan right now, is to continue trying to address these things and move us from a reactionary mode to more of a proactive mode. But we do have our work cut out for us.
I like your passion.
Yes, I do too.
So
and the plan.
I think just to reiterate, one of the things I've heard this board say, and just to say it again publicly, is, folks, previously have done a good job trying to, take care of things. I think what this board does not want is to be at a point of pride just to kind of get by, because we haven't been getting by. And we're, to Mr. Butler's point earlier, we're never going to improve until we really take some leaps forward in some of these areas. So appreciate both of your, I know you both have that vision, so I appreciate you sharing that today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
like Mr. Butler said, let us know what you need.
I appreciate that, and I will.
And Jeff and Bill now have some competition.
And I'm glad that Mr. Butler's here, and I have a good resource here, someone who understands what we're up against. Thank you.
All right. Item 3.09, additional CIP discussions, Mr. Chris Lowe and Mrs. Susan Peterson. You're not far.
You know, Mike ran a much speedier meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I can
ran
assure
a
you
real
one
efficient.
thing.
Mike, where are you, buddy?
I tell you what, we might have to appoint someone.
You want to start up here and then I'll sit back here.
Whatever you wish.
And I'll let you go over the costume first if you would like. And then
Okay.
I'll follow up with the financing.
So you want to talk about Glen Cove and Conda first?
And I'll
You guys were hoping I'd be tired by this point, right?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
You're not?
Just point of clarity, we actually put Ms. Peterson's stuff at the end because she just came from the Board of Supervisors meeting where she was over there for the second
Was it
reading.
5-0?
So.
4-0.
and
an
Oh, that's
absten-
right.
and an
We had an
abstention.
abstention. Good, 4. Perfect.
How did the motion go? Or not the motion, but the presentation?
Mr. Mahoney had some comments that you may want to watch.
Okay. Thank you.
So we want to talk about the Glen Cove and Conda, how we came to those CIP numbers. Is that correct? Okay, so last year, when the CIP was being developed for the cost analysis for Conda and Glen Cove, that was based upon existing square footage of the schools without a program that was developed this past spring. So last year, what happened was Conda was estimated at $16.9 million and Glen Cove was $16.4 million in the CIP. After that was approved, we had hired RRMM and Thomas and Litton Associates to do a study for us on what was needed programming-wise for Glen Cove and W.E. Cundiff. And that was determined that Cundiff needed an additional 26,242 square feet, and Glen Cove would need 17,000 additional square feet on the existing schools. And that was to meet the minimum requirements or standards that the Department of Education had for a school of that size. So when Susan and I had started working on the numbers, what we had done was we did a cost analysis based upon renovating the existing school and then adding the square footage in for the additions at each school. And those numbers, well, I should say, first of all, I should say that one of our vendors who did this study for us also provided cost estimates for us. And I'll let you know those cost estimates were $31 million and $36 million for 2 elementary schools. Mm-hmm. Just when we got into the numbers, they were just overinflated. I can't even explain the inflation that was added into those prices, where it was almost just not even worth reading. Blunt, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it was. So what we came up with was using $250 a square foot for new construction, which is what was low, which we actually used as a lower number than we used last year, and then $220 a square foot for renovation, which was the same as what we used last year. And then we used a 10% soft cost for these schools, which was 9% less than last year. So utilizing those numbers for renovation and new addition, which means 61 for Conda, 61,000 of existing space plus 26,000 of new construction, we can, and plus the 10% of contingency and soft cost, we came up with a $22 million number for Cundiff. For Glen Cove, we had 60,000 square foot existing construction for renovation, and then we had 17,000 square feet for new construction, 10%, and then we were at 19.2 million. Now, that was for renovation and addition. So we went to look at just what would it cost us to do a new build on those sites, stay in the existing school, build a new school, transfer the kids over, knock down the old school. So the new school, we had 87,000 square feet at the $250 a square foot cost, and we came with the 10%, and we were looking at $23.9 million. That was a difference of 1.8 from renovation and addition versus brand new for Cundiff. Glen Cove, I know these are a lot of numbers, I'm sorry, $20,900,000, which was a $1.7 million difference. So Susan and I both felt that after we would incorporate trailers into the cost of a renovation and addition to each of those schools, because there is no way in either of those schools could you keep students within the school, that savings would be negligible. You would lose those savings with the trailers. So that is why we came to you with the CIP cost for Cundiff and Glen Cove a couple of weeks ago.
Does that factor in the demolition of the old?
Yes, it does. Yes, sir. Sure does.
Listen, let me make a couple of comments on those numbers. The original numbers, I agree with you 100%, were way out of line, I thought, compared to what I've seen other elementary schools being constructed for. But here's our challenge. Those numbers may be really good numbers. Intuitively, the cost of renovating existing space plus adding on always seems to me to be a cheaper route than going with all new. That's just my gut. But it's also going to be the gut when we go to the Board of Supervisors to ask for money. We need to be on solid ground as to what those numbers are, because we are going to be asked. Look at the questions we got just on a step versus a bonus. What do you think we're going to get when we go to them with Burton and the two elementary schools? So all I'm saying is that we really need to be on solid ground and to be able to defend those estimates. It's imperative that we do, because we'll lose credibility and I think we'll lose the opportunity to get the funding. So the first job is to convince them these numbers are real.
So
we have to.
And I agree. When we did Cave, so we came, with an estimate, and it was horribly wrong.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and so that made, obviously made us not look too good. So I agree with Mr. Butzer. I'm not sure what the best way to do that unless you
I have a suggestion.
Unless you absolutely feel confident in these numbers, and if, but I think they're going to. I can only speak from what I think they're going to say. Just like Mr. Butzer said, they're going to scrutinize these. That we have somebody that would give us a quick.
Let me just give you my thought, and then you tell if we can do this. I think, and I'm thinking about the way to make it a slam dunk that you're really they'll be convinced that the numbers are real. I think the only way to do that is to get a bid. Right? To go through the bidding process. I mean, unless you're, I can't say it enough. We've got to really be clear about the numbers being the numbers. I'll tell you what I know. Can we do that?
Well, that's my question. Is there a way to do a bid just like we did? Now, it may cost us some money to do it, but actually go to vendors and say, look, we really need to get the best costs that we can on this project, and could we do the same thing we just did for Bird, but just take that number as a way to verify what you've done. Now, is it costly? But I guess what I'm saying is that I think would be a slam dunk on taking the whole argument off the table as to whether or not the numbers are real or not.
Well, I don't disagree. I think there's I think there's probably the opportunity to hire a architect/contractor company to provide us a cost estimate on a program that we have and a square footage,
Yeah.
I think that that's very doable.
I'll
Yes,
tell you
sir.
why I think we're gonna get some real hard questions, and as they should be, right? When I took Mr. Radford through Cundiff, he spent a lot of time looking at the quality of the construction of that building. And he said that they don't build them like this anymore, and that look at the masonry work, and so he was convinced that the building was worth salvaging. So we have to get through that argument. That's all I'm saying.
So let me ask you, is there someone that wouldn't bid on this project that a smaller, well, it's probably small enough that they would bid, but I'm thinking, is there someone that we could get to verify or to give us cost estimates that wouldn't bid on this project? You know what I mean?
I would want to talk to Heath about that, but we're not putting a set of plans out to bid, a design, so to speak. What we would give out is a program and a square footage with that program. You're asking for someone to do a cost analysis on something like that. So you're really not asking for a bid. You're asking for someone to provide a service to you. So I don't think that would preclude anyone from bidding a future job that's designed.
If you don't have a footprint, how do you know what? I mean,
Let's remember how awful Spectrum was at estimating the cost.
Well, I wouldn't go.
That's why I go back to that Cave
You
Spring.
just don't,
You know,
what you need to do is pick a combination of a CM and an architect to help do that.
And there are firms out there who specifically just do this,
Right.
and would not bid something that would come to fruition
I
later
think
on.
we have, and it's not that I'm questioning your credibility, it's that the other side,
gonna
if we have
question
a third party verify what you've done, that's all you can ask. But
Sure.
I really think that if we're going to go to the board and ask for a bond referendum for Burton, don't you think they're going to want to know what is the real number, right? What is the number you want the taxpayers to float?
Yeah.
So it's got to be defendable. That's all I'm saying.
No, understood. And I'll say with this, I have unofficially ran this by some others that I know in the industry, and they felt that these were really good. And then
Okay.
I'll let you know that Susan and I, just where we got our numbers from, was reviewing through the Department of Education, their resources on construction projects over the past 3 to 4 years, and we're actually using real life numbers when it comes to this. A little bit of an average or a weight here and there based upon where these projects are. But for instance, the one that's right up the road from us right now is almost the same square footage as Cundiff that we're proposing, was bid at $23 million.
Is that Colonial?
Colonial.
How about Fallon Park?
Fallon Park was a design build renovation. I don't have that number, but I can get it because I know
It
the
wasn't a
contractor that did the work.
renovation. I thought they tore down, they used the existing facility and then built new.
But it was still design build.
You know, I get that, but it wasn't renovation.
No.
Okay.
They maintained kids in part of the school while they rebuilt the other part and then moved and yes.
They probably did like we wanted to do, they would keep the gym.
Yeah.
Now, just speaking about Burton, to me, I don't know where that Burton number is realistic or not, because we haven't even gotten to the point where we've developed a program yet for Burton.
That's why I think the most critical thing is if we're going to ask for a bond referendum, we really do need to get Burton squared away.
Yes.
That, number one, I think we need to understand what that cost might be through programming and
Let me
choosing
ask
this site.
What about asking them to go in? I mean, we all should agree that needs to be done. Whether we do or not, I don't know. But what about asking them, hey, let's commission this together to get Burton done?
When you say work with who together? Work with the BOS?
Board of Supervisors. Is that a bad idea to say, hey, I know, but.
Well, here's what I think. Clearly, we need to defend the project cost. And so doing the programming and getting the number as tight as you can, which is what they're going to ask us to do.
Sure.
But I'm not so sure that they want to help us design the Burton Center, and I'm not so sure.
But I'm not sure, my only thing is they've gotten into our cookie jar, right?
Well.
Already. So do they have their own thoughts about what that should look like?
Well, I have my own thoughts about what I think their thoughts are, but I think they might lean towards more of a regional approach from a cost saving standpoint. And I think we've all discussed that the best program is one that we maintain 100% ownership
That
of.
we have the control.
I
No,
mean,
I
if
agree
we're really
with that.
looking at our,
Just a thought, because
Yeah.
Well, okay,
maybe
but
they get some buy-in.
yeah, well, listen, since day one, I've been an advocate of maintaining our authority and constitutional authority. I don't want them in our cookie jar. They didn't belong they did not belong in the last discussion, but they got there anyway, and so I made that point. I don't think we want to do that.
Okay.
What our obligation is to come up with the right number for that and say to them that the community needs the Burton Center. This is what it's going to cost, and we'd like to work with you to do a bond referendum. The way that they can work with us is to actually pitch it and say that it's a worthwhile thing doing, rather than to say nothing, right?
Yep.
Which is what they could do.
Yep.
So anyway, at the end of the day, the numbers, if we're gonna go to the community and ask for to float funding for a school, we've gotta have a good number.
Oh, absolutely.
However you think we should do that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I think the first thing we would absolutely have to do is develop the program.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we can't just, we've hired RRMM to do something, can we fit a certain amount of square footage on this site, but we really don't know what was going in that
You're
square
gonna wanna
footage.
do programming, and you're also gonna wanna do some drawings, and the
Yes.
whole, this is a marketing campaign.
Yes.
and,
Ms. Peterson?
So I'm on the money side of this and how can I pay for it?
Oh, you gotta pay for it?
Yeah, so, in the past, when we've done a bond referendum outside of the joint capital funding plan, we have had to fund it ourselves.
Mhm.
And running the numbers, if it does come to fruition that it is a $50.1 million building, then it's gonna cost us $4.5 million a year,
Just to pay the debt.
just to pay the debt. And so we're gonna have to build that into our budget somehow, that level. And that is on top of what we have agreed to increase our 12-12-12 plan every year by 200,000.
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and you probably can predict what it is that if in fact the Burton Center is a facility that's going to advance economic development, and it's in the best interest of our community, then why wouldn't the county help us pay for the debt for the school as well? It's a question. Why not? Why wouldn't they, every year when they transfer their budget, percentage-wise, it gets lower and lower every year, bump that percentage up a little bit and help us fund the debt for the bond? So I would ask them to do that.
It's not a whole lot of difference when we see that, formula shake out, how we're, not to use the word dinged, but how you see the tax incentives that they've passed along
Sure,
to other
yeah.
companies in the form of economic development. I mean, that gets taken off the top of what we get. So, I mean, I see
There's a lot of discussion that we need with our partners
Uh-huh.
about funding what's in the best interest of the community, right? At the end of the day, do we think the Burton Center is something that will attract, new families, keep kids here in the community, help them get jobs? If all that's true, why wouldn't they help us?
Do
Why
we
wouldn't-
have, do we have restrictions on private enterprise being able to help fund that, like the Berglund Automotive Department at Burton? I mean, could we
No,
get
I don't
private
think so.
enterprises to?
No.
There are some schools that are built. We've
Sure.
marked through some of the things we've done the last few years that are, and I can't speak to the specifics, but they were
Then you
something
lease
that.
them back.
Sure.
There were some of those.
Actually, David, we were
Lease them
actually
back.
thinking about, for example, we know that we're going to have an automotive center in this new Burton Center.
Right.
Why wouldn't we want it to be the Haley Berglund
If you get
automotive
those two
center?
together.
Probably wouldn't be
that's
both.
tougher than
Yeah.
Ken getting.
They probably wouldn't want to.
Well, if you can do it, But no, seriously, you could have sponsorships
Yes.
pay for certain parts of the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And that
Well,
would
there are
help.
no
Carilion would
restrictions
be a
on
bit,
it.
they're
Sure,
gonna-
Carilion for whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's opportunities. We need to, at the end of the day, quit kicking it down the road. And we've been doing this for 5 years. we're gonna start work, or we're gonna do this, then they take over and they're, you know, they have their study and then they find out what we already knew.
Yeah,
And
how
so then
about
we're
that?
back to, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I guess I would recommend putting Burton at the top of the list to get busy on what that should look like.
Yeah.
You know, what that cost would be. Because that's, I'm sure they're gonna
We
ask
gotta
us.
start somewhere.
Well, let me just add that I appreciate the fact that this is the first board that even put BCAT on the list. I mean, before we kind of did the reprioritization, BCAT was not even on the list.
That's
So
right.
we really appreciate you all recognizing that it is a priority.
Roanoke County ought to recognize that should be a priority.
Mhm.
I mean, they, you know, should, that's the only reason I say get by, they should Board of Supervisors should recognize, you know, this needs to be done instead of thinking about it in 2 or 3 years and then thinking about it 2 or 3 years. I mean,
I agree.
we're never gonna get there.
Any other comments on 309?
The only other items that I have attached are, it was my understanding that Mr. Butcher, you wanted to see the 12-12-12 plan pulling BCAT out. So that is in here, and it shows that if we do that, we can save 6 years on our Penn Forest, the last
Yeah,
one.
good, yeah.
If we
I think
change
you
that-
did that for us once before, right?
And then if we change that to a 15-15-15, we'll take 9 years off of that last school.
Right, so what I was proposing that our ask would be of the Board of Supervisors was to do a bond referendum for Burton, and then take us to 15, 15, and 15. And by doing that, we knock 9 years off the schedule. And so when we have our joint meeting, that's the kind of data we need to have when we make the pitch, you know, as to what we're trying to do.
So I did speak with Ms. Owens about how much going from a 12-12-12 to a 15-15-15 would cost us. And she had already run the numbers in an attempt to help us out. And she said that instead of the 200,000, it would be 262,500. And that would just, we'd have to add that much to our budget every
Mhm.
single year as a new ad. But it's not as.
462?
No, 262.
262 would be the total.
Okay.
It's not as much as the first time because
Right.
we
that
were
makes sense. I
kind of
got
in the red in the first place.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of make up some
Okay.
lack of funding.
you. Uh-huh.
And so then, once they look at this and they go through a certain period, it was just that smaller increase.
Yeah,
Very good.
I mean, all those things are true. So if you want to do the 9 schools that need to be done yesterday, by the time of 2048 or 2044, wherever we were, then you just keep saying, well, you know, you got to pay for the debt. How are we going to do that? We just got to put this budget money in. Well, you never get anywhere. So yes, that's real, and so we have to find a way to do it, and I think we need them to help us to do it. That would be our pitch.
We'd like to see them done in our lifetime.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
mine for sure, and Mike's, you know, we're getting up there.
Item 3.10, adoption of a resolution of intent to reimburse with future bond sales.
So as you know,
Discussion.
this year, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Didn't mean
sorry.
to cut you off. So this year, we've set aside $12 million to go towards our William Byrd High project, and next year, we're going to add another $3 million to it, for a total of $15 million. Bond issuance in the fall, so about a year from now, we'll have issued it. When you go to issue the bonds, from the point you issue them forward, those costs can be attributable to the bond and reimbursed to the bond unless you adopt this reimbursement resolution, in which case, after this is adopted and accepted by both the school board and the Board of Supervisors, then anything that we spend from that point forward, we can go back after we get the bonds and apply those costs to the bond.
Okay.
So
This is
Now,
advantageous
let
for
me,
us.
is this connect back to the dot of the contract that we've done for Byrd? That does, where you don't have to have the funding in place? Is that what this is all about?
all this does is say that any money spent before the bonds are issued can be applied towards the bonds.
Okay.
So this does not necessarily equate to having the funds versus not having the
I
funds.
see.
in the current year.
So you just want me to vote yes?
Right?
Yes.
Is this something we need to vote on today, or will this be a
We can put
consent?
it on consent for the next meeting.
Consent?
Mhm.
Very
And then,
for me.
Ms. Gerhart will take it to the first reading at their first meeting in January for one reading, and then to the
Will
second one in
you
January.
actually I would love to see a typed version of the resolution.
It is attached to board
Oh,
docs.
it's
Do you
there.
want to
It's
pull
in
it
Word
up?
docs. Okay, I'll read that then. Good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll read it when I get home, thanks.
Now, therefore, it's all fancy.
Yeah. And you do have December 10th on there, I think, if I read that correctly earlier?
Yes, I think, because I had
Yes,
planned in.
at the very bottom. Foregoing resolution was adopted by the school board
Yes.
at our next meeting next Thursday.
All right.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Be glad Mike's back.
Yeah. Our next meeting will be next Thursday, December 10th, and our only other meeting in December.
All right, thank you, sir.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
They didn't even give you a gavel?
They did not.